What is up, Insaners, and welcome to the Game Week 7 Wildcard stream, guys. This is not the deadline stream, this is the Wildcard stream. We are back. We are finally back after a couple of weeks. It was a lull time, and I gotta be honest, guys, really missed FPL, really missed the footballing action. I was a bit busy, I was a bit caught up with some personal stuff, but I think I'm glad all of that is over, all of that is kind of done now. And we're back with FPL. There's a lot to discuss. First things first, this is a wildcard stream. My wildcard, our wildcard team, or the chip is active for us for this week. So a lot of people are, were asking me in DMs, were asking me questions that why are you activating wildcard? What's the reason of going for wildcard? So we'll cover all of those. We'll also, cover our team in terms of what players we've gone for, what kind of picks we've gone ahead with. We'll also talk about the reasoning of each and every pick. I think there's a lot to cover, right? So wildcard is one separate discussion in this video, which of course will dominate the whole stream as per. Apart from that, I think we'll also cover certain questions in terms of if you have certain players, if you have certain transfers to make, if you have a couple of transfers in hand as well, right? So what kind of moves to make? When is the right time to wildcard if you're not wildcarding this particular week? We'll also touch upon the captaincy issue a little bit because I think there's a very good debate that we can have this week between Ronaldo and Lukaku, guys. We also have a couple of very good differentials that you guys can go for. So we'll cover all of those. I think there are some injuries also that have been flagged. There are some players that are missing, and there are some issues which can creep up in the next day or so as well. So we'll kind of cover all of those. Now this stream, this particular video will be a little different. Now the way I have at least planned this is that we'll talk about a team first in terms of what kind of players, what kind of picks we've gone for, and in case if you have any questions regarding those picks, regarding those, let's say if we start with defenders or we start with goalkeepers, right? So you can ask certain questions regarding goalkeepers, regarding these defenders, etc., and then we can move on to midfielders and forwards. So I think it's a little more structured. I think that approach is a little more it's easy to kind of follow for the other people as well. So we'll kind of try to maintain that, and let's see where we go in the stream. And as and when you guys have any questions regarding the kind of players that we are talking about, please feel free to put that in the chat, put that in the comments below. If you've not liked the video, like the stream so far, guys, make sure you do that. Make sure you hit the like button. You can also subscribe to the channel if you've not done so. If you're new around here and if you're seeing me for the first time and if you like what you see today, you can also subscribe to the channel. We generally do a lot of FPL stuff. It's been a couple of weeks since we've kind of mellowed down and slowed down a bit, but I think it's gonna continue for the coming time, and we're kind of going into the international break, so we'll probably get a bit of rest again. But I think in general we'll be doing a lot more content on Instagram as well. So if you're not following us on Instagram or on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, make sure you follow us on Instagram as well. Now on the screen, as you can see, and I think it's pretty clear. If you can't see the screen and you can't see the team, let me know. But this is the team that we have again, guys. A disclaimer, because I get a lot of comments, I get a lot of DMs about it. This is not the final team. This is absolutely nowhere the final team that we probably would go for. It's quite set in terms of certain picks, and I'll kind of cover that in the coming time. But I think there are a couple of changes that we can still get into this team. So don't get surprised if you see certain players, if you see certain picks which haven't been spoken about so far, which we've not seen in any team so far. Don't worry, don't get scared. I think I'll kind of cover all the reasoning behind why I've gone for these players and what could be the alternate transfers, right? So we'll cover all of that. I think it's gonna be a great stream. I'm there for a long time today because I've kind of missed out on all the action. So in case if you have any regular questions as well, so feel free to post that as well. And in general, I'll kind of start with talking about my team in terms of how I've structured it, why have I played the wildcard, right? Because I have got a lot of queries, a lot of questions in terms of why have you, what's the cutoff point, or what is that point where you actually decide that you have to play the wildcard, right? And I think for my team, of course, this is the wildcard draft that we're going for, or we have in mind. But in general, my team had Trent, which who looks flagged for the moment. I think we still haven't got confirmed news, but he might be out for at least a week. It's a bit of tricky situation because next week, of course, we have the international break and we have a time period where he can actually recover without playing any games. So that could mean that he doesn't really miss out for a longer period of time, right? So that makes the situation a bit tricky, and then we'll kind of cover why what we have some balance money remaining in the bank as well. So we've kind of covered that angle as well. If we want to get Trent back into the team, we can do that. But I think in general, I had Shaw, and Shaw also is flagged again. There are rumors, there are conversations, there are different threads on Twitter, etc., which are mentioning different timelines for Shaw's release, right? So Shaw's coming back from injury. Some people are saying he might be back after the international break. Some people are saying he might still play the game, the current game, game week 7 game as well. So we still haven't got that concrete information in terms of what's going to happen with Shaw. But in general, I had Shaw, I had Trent. These are two people which are flagged. Apart from that, I had Jota, I had Greenwood as well. Now, these kind of players, you can go ahead with them, you can play them in your team, you can also kind of transfer them out. It's a very 50-50 sort of a call again, and depends on what are the other players or who are the other players in your team, right? So I didn't have any Chelsea assets, and Chelsea is one team, and again, a few of you might think that Chelsea have kind of lost a couple of games on the bounce, and whether their assets might be worth it, might not be worth it. The current set of fixtures, etc., that are coming up, I think that really calls up for at least a couple of Chelsea players, if not a triple up on the Chelsea team. So I think I didn't have any Chelsea players. Of course, I had Ronaldo, which is an okay transfer, which is an okay player to have this week. I've got a lot of DMs, asking me whether to remove Ronaldo, whether to get in Ronaldo, take out, take out Ronaldo, get in Lukaku. So that kind of conversation is also kind of going in the community. So I had Ronaldo, which was again fine, but in general, I think I wanted to change the structure of the team. I'm not very confident in terms of when we talk about the likes of Jota, Greenwood, Rafinha also might not play. Though you still see Rafinha in the squad, but again, that's a bit of a risk. I also wanted to jump on at least one City defender, if not, a couple of options. In terms of my goalies, I think Sanchez was doing an okay job. I was absolutely fine with that. But having only two strikers, two playing strikers, because I had Scarlett. I remember I had Scarlett in my team. So having only two playing strikers, and then I'm very bound to either play a 4-4-2 or a 3-5-2, right? So not very comfortable with that, considering that we do not have clear cut options in midfield. I wanted to have at least a larger breadth of options. Again, you might think that probably played the wildcard a bit earlier, because there's lack of information. You don't really know which assets are very nailed, or they are doing consistently very well. And we've kind of have a drought in terms of the midfield premium, sort of mid to premium sort of range category, and there aren't a lot of options that are really clicking right now. Of course, you have players, but they're not really a lot of options that you can go for there. So I think all of these factors combined made me take that plunge and to go for the wild card. I thought that this is the right time to go and get those Chelsea players. They have a very kind run of fixtures, and I think people who do not won't be going for a wild card, at least would be trying to take a hit, maybe even two hits, right? So I can get ahead of the curve. I can get ahead of those players, not take a hit, and change my squad in the entirety, right? So if you are only having a couple of moves, if you're only having a couple of transfers to make, if you have two free transfers, or probably even you're playing with one transfer and you don't have a lot of problems with your team. Let's say if you already have a couple of Chelsea options, you have a City player as well. You don't have Shaw. You probably by chance you don't have Trent, etc. So I think that is where you don't go for the wild card. You probably wait for more information, wait for a better turn, because generally feel that game week 8 could be a better time to play the wild card if your team is not really in a bad shape, right? I personally felt, and again, it's a very personal call because it totally depends on your team. So I thought that going ahead with a wild card, changing my team a little bit in this particular week might be the best option. I was not very confident last week as well, because we struggled last week, right? So all of these factors combined, I think that is what made me do the wild card, or made me play the wild card, or press the wild card button and go for the team. Now, coming to the team, and we'll start with the goalkeeper options, because we've had a lot of questions around goalkeepers in terms of which ones to go for, whether I have the right goalkeeper right now, irrespective of whether I'm playing the wild card or not. If you're having regular transfers, do you have the right goalkeeper? Would you want to take a punt? Of course, goalkeeping punt is probably unheard of, and you won't do that. But I think in general, if you are on a wild card, I think this is a very valid conversation to kind of have, where you can go for a couple of options. You A lot of people already have the likes of Sanchez. Maybe a lot of people have Melier in their team, right? And Leeds have really been leaky. We do not expect them to keep clean sheets. I think it's that is something that has been very clear from whatever games we've seen so far. Leeds aren't a team who would keep clean sheets, right? On the other hand, in fact, you would target a Leeds fixture, especially if it's at home of the other team that is playing Leeds, right? So I think you can easily go for someone like a Ramsdale, and I think I'll tell you why I've kind of gone for him. Ramsdale, I think, was, of course, there were conversations whether Leno is going to be number one, whether Ramsdale is going to be number one. It wasn't really clear. Arsenal were struggling in terms of a lot of players getting injured, a lot of players not playing, and their 11 was kind of a makeshift team that was coming onto the pitch and playing teams. And the fixtures were tricky, right? So the fixtures were tough. So all of that combined, their numbers were pretty average. We weren't really talking about Arsenal. Again, it's not a knee-jerk reaction because certain people or some people might feel that now Arsenal has done really well against Spurs, which is an okay team. I won't really call the Spurs fixture very tough right now, considering how they're playing. So you're knee-jerking to that, game, and you're probably getting in a player which might not even start every game, right? So, and that's a very valid conversation or an argument to have because Ramsdale, and if you compare him with Leno, I think yes, he's done really well in the past few weeks. Yes, he's made the Arsenal defense a lot stronger, and I think that's a bit surprising considering how he's done for the earlier teams that he's played for. But I think he's still the number one keeper. I think he's done very well. He's a good shot stopper, so he will get you saves, and that's a very important aspect. The way Arsenal play, they also try to play from the back as well, where the goalkeeper is also involved in terms of playing passes, in terms of playing balls, etc. So I think there that particular aspect also enhances his bonus points potential, right? So and I think that's very important when we're considering the goalkeeper to go for. Yes, you could argue that he's probably a couple of games away, or probably let's say if he doesn't perform for a stretch of games, Leno might come in, who right now is rumored to leave Arsenal. I think there are rumors circulating around the club and in the fan clubs and in the forums that Arsenal have. I think there's a lot of rumor going around whether Leno might stick or might stay in the team. I think he could leave in January, and I think that also speaks a lot about Leno as an option or Leno as a replacement for Ramsdale, right? So I think Arsenal have done really well. Their defense is improving. The partnership with White and Gabriel, I think that has started to kind of show some positive signs. I won't really say that they're suddenly the best defense in the league. Of course, they're not. But I think their defense is improving. I think with value, right? Because he's only what? He's 4.5, 4.6, I think. So with that price, I think you're getting a person or you're getting a player who would at least give you clean sheet points, who could also score you some bonus points if, let's say, the game is pretty close and if Arsenal's not beating teams by 2, 3, or 4 goals, right? So and I think a lot of people are not expecting that. So I think all factors combined, yes, there is a slight element of risk involved in terms of whether he's going to lose his place, but I really feel in terms of whatever pods, etc., I've listened to or whatever conversations I've been a part of on Twitter, I think he definitely is expected to start most games. Now Arsenal don't have Europe or don't have European football, so I think that also helps. I think there is no rotation or there is no player getting, let's say he's tired or he's fatigued or he needs a rest, etc. I don't think so that's going to happen. I think Ramsdale is Arsenal's number one. I think he's the great option to go for. In case if you're not confident about Ramsdale, I think you can also go for Jose Sa again. I personally don't like him. He's still a great option, right? Wolves can still keep a couple of clean sheets. Again, their fixtures are still okay. They're not getting that bad, but I think he can still be an option. Of course, you might think that he's a 5 million goalkeeper, and you might not want to invest 5 million for a goalkeeper, and that's an absolutely fair point. That's a fair assumption or a comparison to kind of have or make because again, I just last year again Martinez was a different example because he started at 4.5, right, and he continuously gained price and he increased in price and he kind of reached that level. This year he's 5.5 and he's struggling. Villa's still a decent defensive team. Again, they struggled in a couple of games that they played this season, but in general, I think they've been still okay. They've been little above average, but I think in general, you would probably not want to go for a keeper. You would considering how many attacking options you can go for, right? You have 5.5 to 6 million midfielders. You have a couple of options that you can go for there. You can also go for someone like a Rafinha or a Saka, let's say in midfield if you are kind of struggling for money and if you want to take that jump. So you have that option as well. In attack, of course, there are certain players, there are certain options that you can also upgrade to. So there are options that you can go for, right? And you would probably want to invest as less as possible when it comes to goalkeeper. So I think Sai is a decent option to have. I think if you already have him, you keep him. You might not want to have him on a wild card, right? The second keeper that I've gone for is Foster again. He's starting right now because Bachmann is injured. Again, I feel whenever Bachmann comes back, he would be, taking Foster's place, and I think Foster would lose his place. Considering right now that's not the possibility, or that might not happen right now, I think Foster is an okay replacement to have for Ramsdale in case if he misses a game or two, which I really doubt is going to happen, right? So I think I've tried to spend the least amount, amount on the keepers or this keeper combination possible. I know, a few people might say that trusting the Arsenal defense or trusting the Arsenal backline might backfire. But I generally feel, with restricted games, with limited games that they have in the league, I think with Party, again, that's a very, if you've seen Arsenal games and if you've seen how they have been playing, right? Especially the Spurs game, again, that's a one off. It might be an outlier sort of a game. You might not read too much into that particular game because you might not get that kind of a battering from Arsenal against every team, right? The Brighton game could be a little difficult, could be a little tricky as well. It's an away game as well. So there are reasons that you can avoid Ramsdale as well. But I think with the value that he's providing with the defense, and Arsenal is still one of the premium teams. Of course, it's not in comparison to a City or a Chelsea or even a United or a Liverpool right now, but they're still a decent team to go for, right? They could get some good points, and I think Ramsdale, with his potential, I think he could do well. You're not really spending a lot of money, so you're not really wasting or you're not really investing too much in the keeper. Again, you might have an argument that I don't want to make a transfer. Probably you've kind of gone for Sanchez, or you already have Sanchez. Sanchez is okay. There are fixtures that will be turning for Brighton. I think Brighton, their fixtures get a bit tricky. But if you look at the overall, perspective, if you look at the overall, let's say the next 10, 15, 20 sort of games, or till the next wild card that you will be playing, I think if you've invested money and if again, I think Sanchez right now is 4.6, right? So going with two rotating keepers, as Praveen just mentioned, that's also an option right now. But I so again, with rotating keepers, it's a bit tricky because at least in my experience, what I've, and feel free to share your comments, and if you have any comments there with rotating keepers, what I've generally felt, you try to, and especially if they have a good combination of fixtures, right? One keeper might have a tricky one keeper might have a easier fixture, then it's probably a little easier. But if both keepers have decent fixtures, I think it's very tricky to pick the right one. And I think with me, and this happened a couple of seasons ago where I tried to play with two rotating keepers, and more often than not I got the wrong one, right? What I mean by that is that I played the wrong option. The keeper that I played didn't get a clean sheet or got a couple of points, probably conceded two or three or even more goals, or probably got very less points. And the keeper that I had on my bench, that keeper outscored my playing 11 keeper. So it's a very tricky situation with two rotating goalkeepers, and I think value around 9, 9.1, 9.2, that sort of a value, or probably even 9.5 if you're playing with a 5 plus a 4.5 goalkeeper. I think it's a bit trickier because you're investing a lot of money. I think there are serious upgrades that you can do in defense. If you've not got a Chelsea defender, if you've not got a Man City defender, if you probably are with Semedo and you want to change Semedo for a Chelsea or a City defender, I think those are better upgrades to go for. Those are more material upgrades to go for, because in general, I think with keepers you don't really get a lot of upside, right? You either get what the Brighton keeper Sanchez is doing is he's probably giving you 2 or a 6. He's Whenever he concedes a goal, he doesn't really make a lot of saves, so he gives you a couple of points. You also, of course, Brighton is a decent team and they can keep clean sheets, but then also he won't be really giving you a lot of points, right? He won't be making a lot of saves. He's generally given 6 points as a norm, and I think that's probably going to continue. And that is where you probably get someone like a Ramsdale and probably a 4 million keeper. You save that money. You generally won't make a goalkeeper transfer until and unless your keeper is injured. So I think it's a bit tricky. I personally won't go for two rotating keepers because it gets a little trickier to understand, which one might keep a clean sheet. Because at the end of it, we are playing the odds, we are, consuming information, we are taking our own decisions, and those can go wrong, right? So there's no guarantee that your playing keeper might get a clean sheet. Your bench one might get one, right? And to avoid that kind of situation, because then it'll be chaotic and you won't be in the right frame of mind, you might take bad decisions and all of that stuff. So make away or do away with that dilemma at least, because there's a lot that can happen otherwise in your team, among your forwards, among your midfielders, or even defenders. At least from a goalkeeper perspective, have a clear thought, have a clear perspective, go with an option which is a steady option which can give you decent points. You can see fixtures from a long-term perspective as well, because they'll kind of even out, right? Certain teams which have good fixtures right now might have some tricky ones later on, so you might not get those clean sheet points later on. So try to go for keepers who generally, or try to go for teams or keepers from teams who generally concede a lot of shots. Arsenal are one team that are conceding a lot of shots, and that gives Ramsdale a good opportunity to make some saves, right? Now Raya could also be one option. I think you can also go for someone like a Raya. Yes, Raya's fixtures in the next two specifically, I would probably say the next 4 or 5 are a bit tricky. But Brentford are a team who have been keeping it very tight at the back, right? Yes, they've conceded shots. They've not conceded big chances, and that's one thing to kind of note and kind of understand. They're not conceding a lot of big chances which would lead to goals, but they are conceding chances and they're also conceding a lot of shots. Now, again, that translates to shots going on target and Raya probably making a lot more saves, right? And that's why people who have gone for Raya, who went with Raya in the beginning, they've benefited because he's given those kind of hauls, right? So I think Raya would be probably a second number two. If I really have to rank, I'd probably go with Ramsdale as my number one pick. I would probably go with Raya as the second one and Sanchez as the third one. I still think there are better fixtures to target with the Arsenal defense tightening up and Ramsdale probably making a lot more saves than someone like a Sanchez. I think he's the one to go for. Now, coming to defense, and I think this is where things get a bit interesting, because in specifically in defense, right, you would see that I've gone for Rudiger, Aspilicueta, which are my two Chelsea options. I have Semedo as my third option, which is in my 11 right now. That's again, it's probably going to change. On the bench, I have Cancelo and I have Livramento. So out of all these defenders, I have only kept Livramento as my fifth defender, and I think there's merit to kind of do that. A lot of people, again, there's a different strategy to kind of go for here, right? Now a lot of people have gone very heavy at the back, and that's a very viable or a complete strategy to go for, considering that you do not really know what kind of midfield options to go for, what kind of mid-range midfield options to go for. You can invest a bit heavier or a bit heavy in defense, because defense would be giving you value, specifically if you consider the Man City and Chelsea defense. Yes, Chelsea did concede against Man City. They had a very average game. In fact, they were outplayed, very badly by Man City. Man City had a great game. The way they pressed the Chelsea players, right? That completely, I think that kind of gave a game plan in terms of how to break that Chelsea defense, how to break that backline, and how to kind of break that rhythm in the game, right? Which Tuchel is very well instilled in the team. So I think that was a blueprint for the other teams as well in terms of how you really play with Chelsea. Of course, Man City in terms of quality would be a lot different from the other smaller teams. But I still feel Chelsea defense has value. Again, it's a bit tricky because there are a couple of options, which you would want to go for. I think Rhys James here, and I think I'll cover him first because he's right now he's injured, but he could be an option, a potential option in the next couple of weeks, right? Now, Rhys James, again, he had a couple of okay games, then he had a massive haul. A lot of people were very heavy and very high on him as an option. Of course, he got that red card, which was very unfortunate. But in general, I think whatever at least I have seen from Reece James, he's been doing pretty well in terms of his crossing ability, the way he's crossed the ball, the way he's taken the ball forward. I think he looks a lot more advanced. He makes those forward runs, and he's a great crosser of the ball as well, right? He creates chances for someone like a Lukaku to pounce on, because if you are Lukaku, or if you're playing with Lukaku as your main man, right? You need somebody to feed Lukaku. Of course, Lukaku can still create chances for other players, can bring the likes of Havertz, Pulisic, and all of these players into play. But if you are playing with Lukaku as your main focal point, I think you would need someone like a Chilwell, for example, or even a Reece James who could deliver crosses, right? Yes, Alonso has been doing well, but we know that Alonso is not a great crosser of the ball, right? Now, of course, Reece James right now is not an option, but he could be a potential option. So in case if you are not wildcarding, if you are not looking at a couple of Chelsea options, I think this he could be one to watch out for. So let's just get that at least out of the window. Now, if you look at the couple of other options, right? You have the likes of Rudiger, you have Aspilicueta. Rudiger is around the 5.5 sort of a price range, which is okay considering you're getting an elite defender, you're getting an elite defense who would give you clean sheet points. But now with Rudiger, yes, there is a slight edge in terms of attacking threat or threat from set pieces, corners, and all of that. But it's not really that high, right? When you talk about Christensen, he could, especially with the injury, injury to Rhys James and Silva also kind of coming back in. Silva would share minutes. I think Christensen as an option, if let's say if you talk about the next 5 games, would be probably starting the next four, right? There could still be an occasional benching which Christensen has or or goes through. But I think more often than not, he's going to play in that Chelsea backline. The fixtures are great, right? You have really good fixtures. If I look at the fixtures and if I have it open here, so if you look at Chelsea's fixtures, they're playing Southampton next, which is again a pretty good fixture. I think Southampton, yes, they've looked pretty attacking, but that's a fixture where you would at least think of Chelsea getting a clean sheet. Brentford is going to be a little tricky considering how they played against Liverpool. Yes, Liverpool's defense and Chelsea's defense is also a bit different, right? So you probably would expect Chelsea to dominate that game and shut down any sort of chances or any sort of attacking threat which Brentford might possess. Then you have Norwich, Newcastle, Burnley, and Leicester, right? So Norwich, Newcastle, Burnley are all great games. You can easily target them for a clean sheet, and I think you can also go for defenders which have an attacking upside, right? So yes, we've gone for Rudiger, who is probably the safest option. He has the most. I think he would be the most nailed defender. Yes, we saw that there were a couple of games where he was benched last season. He didn't play, and there was some rotation, especially during the latter games of the Champions League. But I think right now Rudiger is the most nailed option to go for. He's cheaper than someone like an Aspilicueta, and I'll tell you why I've gone for Aspilicueta here. And this could, of course, change, but right now I have Aspilicueta in my team. Now, Aspilicueta, if you look at him as an option, he's one of the most dependable. Leave FPL for a second, right? He's one of the most dependable options in that Chelsea team or in that Chelsea defense, which will give you regular minutes, which will give you a consistent, let's say, 7.5 out of 10 sort of a performance week on week, right? And you can expect that consistency from Aspilicueta. In general, I think it's again, he doesn't have a lot of attacking threat. Yes, if he plays right wing back, let's say if James is injured and Aspilicueta slots into that right wing back position, I think yes, there is merit that he would be advancing a bit more than the three centre backs who are playing at the back. But again, would he be doing that more often, or would he be doing that in and out like someone as compared to someone like an Alonso or probably James or even a Chilwell, right? I really don't think so. With Aspilicueta, you're getting a guarantee in terms of starts. Uh, there could be again slight risk of rotation, but it's not very huge. I think he can play in that right wing back or that right centre back role. I think with that versatility, with that experience, I think he would be the one who would be, getting majority of the minutes at least for the next couple of game weeks. Yes, again, you can go for someone like an Alonso, and the reason I've not covered Alonso here is that again, there's a lot of hype around Alonso. His numbers have been great. He's been doing really well. With Alonso, you don't really consider him as a defender, right? You consider him as a second Chelsea attacker along with Lukaku, who bombs forward, who will give you those 10, 15, probably even a 20-pointer haul, which with someone like a Rudiger or Aspilicueta might not give you, right? The risk with Alonso and the people who are thinking of having him on a wild card or probably having him as a regular transfer is that I really don't think that he's 100% nailed. Yes, he's done very well. Yes, he's been getting a lot of regular minutes, and I think Tuchel has really trusted him in terms of starts, and he's kind of delivered as well, right? We know that he's not a great crosser of the ball, so and that's why Lukaku has been struggling a little bit in the last couple of games. Of course, they were premium teams as well, so that really makes a difference. But I think in general, with Alonso, you get that attacking upside, you get that it's a high risk, high reward strategy, right? You go for that sort of a pick, you take advantage or you get benefit of those 10, 15 pointers that he will give you. But he's also prone to an occasional benching or even properly being benched, considering that Chelsea has easier fixtures right now, right? Now we saw I was in fact waiting for that Champions League game, and I wanted to see what kind of formation and what kind of players play in that formation. I think the formation was pretty set against Juventus, but what kind of players were fitting into it, whether Tuchel would trust Alonso against the Juventus team. He did, but then Alonso came off, at halftime. Again, there are a couple of reasons for it as well. Some people are saying that because he was yellow carded, Tuchel didn't want to take that chance, didn't want to take that risk. and that is one of the reasons he got substituted. He of course didn't play that well, and he was also struggling against Man City. So that could also be a reason that Tuchel wanted to change things a bit, change the style a bit. He threw in Chilwell, who we know that is a great crosser of the ball, who again also bombs forward, but then he has a different style. His attacking output in terms of creating chances or getting assists would be a lot higher as compared to an Alonso, whose goal threat would be a lot higher, right? Because with Alonso, you get a player who will bomb into the box, who will take shots as well, right? And those numbers are pretty high for him as well. So I think with Alonso, you take that risk, and this is something that we can still go for, right? I'm not 100% nailed in terms of whether going for Aspilicueta right now. Yes, right now the thought is to go for Aspilicueta because I want to go a bit safer. But if in case you are taking a 1 week punt, let's say for example you're not having a wild card, you're not doing a wild card this week, you still want to replace someone like a Trent, for example, or even a Shaw, and then that's a kind of a straight swap. If you want to go there, I think he's a great 1 week punt. Yes, there are chances that he gets benched in this game. Though he played 45 minutes, he would be probably, he won't be that tired or he won't be fatigued. So he could start the game. But I think there are chances that, his place is probably not something which is very permanent or which is very fixed. I think Chilwell will get a run in these sort of games. These are easier games, right? And if Chilwell has been having a tough time, especially after the Euros and with all that mental breakdown and, his mental issues and mental problems that kind of came up, and he came out in the press and spoke about it a lot. So I think you need that comfortable transition for Chilwell as well. And I don't think so Tuchel will overstress or overplay Alonso in the Champions League. Then I think Alonso is also selected for the Spain international games as well, right? And that kind of adds another big issue in the mix, because if he's playing in the international break and if he's playing for Spain, there's a high chance that he gets rested, considering that he also played for the Champions League game, right? Though it was only a half, but I think there are good chances that he gets benched for this game. And I think it's that threat or that issue, right, where I'm not really sure whether he's gonna start or not. I think that is what's been going on in my mind. I have the likes of Cancelo, who's a similar pick, right? If you talk about Cancelo, I think he's also a similar pick who could be benched by Pep. We all know, we've all played the roulette, right? So I think it's a bit tricky because you would want to attack that huge upside that Alonso gets you, but you would also want somebody who starts, right? Let's say if you do not have a bench, if you're not playing a wild card, if you're not even punting for a week, and if you don't intend to play for a wild card, then Alonso is probably not the right move then, right? So you go for somebody like a Rudiger, who's probably going to give you 6 points, but is definitely a nailed option. You don't go for Aspilicueta, of course, because he's expensive. In case if you're going for a double up, then Alonso becomes an option. But in general, I think Rudiger is the most safest. If you have the risk appetite, if you're okay taking the risk, and if you don't have a problem with the occasional benching, or if he starts getting benched, then it's a different thing, right? Because if he's benched for a couple of games, if you see that Chilwell is now being played in those easier fixtures, then I think it's an easy move. If you have the wild card, or if you have other transfers to make, you make those on the wild card, or you just swap him out for a different defender, or even Chilwell if he's a nailed starter. So there are question marks around Alonso. I think there's merit in waiting for Tuchel's press comments, or if there's any questions around what's going to be the lineup, and what kind of players are fit and ready to play this particular week. I think there's merit to wait for that. Right now, I have Aspilicueta. If I get an inkling that Alonso is more nailed to start, or if he's certain to start, right, I think you can go for Alonso as well. So there's merit in going for two Chelsea defenders. I think that you can easily go for a couple of Chelsea defenders. They're still, again, they're not as good as Man City right now, of course, because Man City had a decent run of fixtures. Chelsea had a really tough run of games. Now, in spite of that, they're still, I think, the fourth or the fifth best defense in terms of the underlying stats, right? And that's definitely saying something about the Chelsea defense, which has been good over a consistent period of time now under Tuchel. So I think there's merit in going for the Chelsea double up. You can also go for something like a Man City double up, where you have someone like a Diaz or you have someone like a Cancelo, and I think that's where my conundrum was, whether to kind of go for the Man City defense. Now my issue, or the problem that you will face when you're wildcarding in game week 7, is that game week 7 Man City is facing Liverpool. That's probably the toughest game from an attacking perspective, because you know Liverpool have been the best team in terms of attack in the season so far, right? Whatever games have happened, I think they've shown the best numbers, they've shown the best attacking threat, and they have Salah, right? Who's I think who's in the form of his life. Is probably the best I've seen him play over the long period of time that he's been in the league. I think, and it's gonna be a tricky fixture, and having a couple of City defenders would be a bit trickier for this particular game week. Again, if you're okay taking that risk, if you're okay letting go of those points where you don't mind having a couple of pointers from two players, let's say if you bench one and if you have to play one, for example, and if you look at the bigger picture, I think that's also a decent, a way to look at things, a decent option to go for. I think their defense is outrightly the best. Man City's defense is outrightly the best so far in the league, and they've hardly conceded shots, they've hardly conceded big chances. I think Diaz is the most nailed option to go for if you are looking at one defender from the Man City team. I think Diaz is the probably the safest option to go for. But again, he probably would be that Rudiger, probably a little more safer than Rudiger, I would say. Of course, in a different price bracket, as if you compare both the teams. Now, if you compare, someone like a Cancelo to a Diaz, I think Cancelo again, like an Alonso, I think he has great upside. He has great potential to do really well, and give you those assist points. And he's been doing that, right? So he's got a couple of assists already. He's got a couple of decent hauls, and you would want to take advantage of that, right? Now the issue with Cancelo, and we've seen that last season, I think a couple of seasons back as well. I think with Pep, you really can't say that this player is going to be nailed. Yes, he's been playing a lot of games. In fact, he's been playing all the games so far, and he's done decently well. Uh, but you would never know with Pep, with the Champions League coming up, with international break coming up. You could see. I think I don't think so. Zinchenko is fit enough to start or fit enough to play in the team right now, and of course you don't have Mendy. So there are lack of options there. Nathan Ake, again I don't think so. He's going to feature in any capacity. So I think he's nailed. But us managers thinking that a Man City asset is nailed as compared to what Pep thinks is could be very different, right? And that is where you feel that risk and feel that threat. And I feel having the likes of Cancelo, Alonso, both, I think it becomes a little more risky because there could be a chance, there could be a week where both get benched or both get rested. I think that is where you would probably, focus or depend on the bench, on those bench points, on those bench defenders. And if you don't have a playing bench, I think you will be playing with 9 or 10 players, right? And I think that's where my conundrum was. If I'm going with somebody like a Cancelo, I think had to kind of, you know, adjust that risk factor with someone like a Rudiger and an Azpilicueta. Yes, I can still go for an Alonso, but I think that will be a bit too risky, right? So there are options that there are combinations, there are options that you can go for. Yes, if you are wildcarding in game week 8, I think the decision becomes slightly more easier because then you can easily get two Man City defenders. You can go for a double up because I still feel a lot of people will be very very mixed in terms of whether to go for a Chelsea double up, whether to go for a Man City double up. I've seen some drafts where they have four at the back, and they've certain managers have gone very heavy at the back with two City and two Chelsea defenders, right? And that's a very very different take, and that's a very differential sort of a perspective on the entire thing. And I think that could also work out, but again, you've invested a lot of money in defense, and you might have to make some adjustments, across the pitch, probably in midfield or even in attack, right? So if you feel that you're not a manager who likes to probably invest a lot in defense, who probably likes to play with a three-man back, which at least I have done for majority of my FPL career. I think then you probably go with one City and a one Chelsea defender, and you probably mix that with Trent, for example, if you want to go with a three-man back or a three premium defense. Now Trent is a bit tricky, and I think I saw a couple of questions where I saw that Trent is not there in the draft. But by the way, this draft has, I think, about 2 million, and I'll just check that. I think it has about 2 million in the bank, so we have a good amount of money to get Trent back in this team as well. Yeah, so this draft has 2 million, which is the money remaining in the bank, and I can easily go, or I can easily do an Aspilicueta or even a Rudiger to Trent. And I think for that move, I'll have the exact money. With Aspilicueta, I think it'll be a little easier to do that. So I have kept that money in this draft because I feel Trent is outrightly the best defender to target. Yes, he's probably facing the toughest team in the league. He's probably not even playing this particular week. There are conversations, there are rumors that there are talks that he might come back after the international break. So if you are on a wild card, there is merit to probably hold him, but then again you'll have to definitely bench him. Focus on the other players and have a decent bench that you can play, for this particular week. There's also merit in not going with Trent for this particular week, considering that he has a tough game. He might not play. Liverpool in general might not keep a clean sheet, or it might be a high scoring game, it might be a low scoring game. Trent might not be. So there are a lot of elements, or there are a lot of red marks or check marks out there. And I think if you want to avoid that, there is definitely merit not to go for Trent on your wildcard if you're wildcarding this week. If you don't have a wildcard, if you're not playing your wildcard and if you don't want to make that transfer, just simply bench Trent. I still feel he is the best defender to go for. I don't think that you should sell him. If we get some news in terms of if he's gonna be out for at least, let's say, 3 or 4 weeks, or slightly longer that than a lot of people are talking about, then I think there's a valid conversation or a valid point to have where you sell him, you get a Man City defender, you get a Chelsea defender. But right now, I think there is merit in keeping him on the bench if you're not wildcarding. I think that's really important. If you want to, again, if you let's say if you are trying to wildcard in game week 8, for example, right? You're not wildcarding this week. You have a transfer, or if you have a couple of transfers to make, then Trent to an Alonso is also a good move. Right now I'll tell you why. In case if we get that information, if we feel, or if you feel comfortable taking that risk, because this is punt category, right? This is definitely punt category if you want to take a punt for a week, and if you're wildcarding in game week 8, and if Trent comes back in game week 8, you can remove Trent for this particular week. You can go for someone like an Alonso who has an easier team. Again, might be benched, might not be benched. That's a different conversation, but who could give you that upside, who could be a good 1 week punt. And if you don't want to continue with let's say with Alonso, if he let's say if he gets benched, and if you anyways plan to wildcard in game week 8 and then get Trent, I think that's also a valid strategy to go for. If you have, for example, Shaw, and if you want to transfer him out, then of course these Chelsea options are available, these Man City options are available. So I think depending on what you're doing this week, whether you're wildcarding in 8, whether you're not even wildcarding on 7 and 8, and you probably want to get rid of Trent or probably keep him, there are certain decisions that you can make. Of course, there is merit in keeping him because he's Trent is definitely gonna be up there in terms of attacking returns and attacking numbers. I think his stats outrightly are way ahead of any defender that you can go for, right? Yes, Liverpool's clean sheet potential is a bit wobbly. Van Dijk has come back. He's still not. I still feel that he's not up to the mark. He's not as sharp as he was when he was playing, properly, and properly playing games and playing the full 90 minutes. I think because of course, the injury that he had, he's going to take slightly longer. And I think that's kind of, making that Liverpool defense not as great as someone like a Chelsea or a Man City, right? So I think, of course, you can go with different directions. You can, have different options, different strategy, and it totally depends on your team and what you're doing for this week, right? Based on what you have planned, I think these are some options that you can go for, or these are some directions that you can look into. Semedo, again, a lot of people might not hold Semedo on a wild card, considering that Wolves is probably not as great in terms of keeping clean sheets, not as good as a defense as a lot of people would have thought. But I still feel with the likes of something similar to what a Cancelo or a Alonso does, right? You don't consider Semedo as a defender. Of course, he's a defender, but he's also attacking all the time. He's way forward. He's playing really advanced. He's been a bit unlucky in terms of getting returns. He's played really well in terms of the actual football. Of course, he's got a couple of chances where he's not finished them, and he's not a natural finisher, right? So yes, he struggled in that regard, but I still feel there is merit in keeping him, especially for the attacking return, right? He's not a let's say he's not a Cody, for example, or a Kilman, who would just give you clean sheet points. Because if that was the case, then I would probably not hold those players on a wild card. With Semedo, of course, you get a lot of attacking output. You get a chance to to get assists, to probably even get a goal, considering that he's taking shots inside the box, considering that he's trying to go for goal as well. There is merit in keeping him at least for the next few weeks. Of course, if you don't want to play him, I have in this particular draft, I have Livramento, who's also having great fixtures. I think from game week 8 is when I think the fixtures turn for Southampton. So they have Leeds in game week 8, which is again a great fixture. Then they have Burnley, Watford, Villa, Norwich. So these are good games, and I think a lot of people are underestimating the value of that fifth defender, right? A lot of people have Duffy and they're okay because they're saying that we do not want to play Duffy in most more games. We already have Sanchez. We don't trust the Brighton double up, which is an absolute fair point. But I think Livramento could be a genuine option. I think he's been attacking. He's been playing well. Like I think he could be a great option for Southampton in terms of attack, which is struggling a little bit. But I think when the fixtures turn, when they're playing the likes of Leeds, Burnley, Watford, I think that these are the games where they can get those attackers to get some, attacking points, to get some goals, get some assists, get some confidence back in the team, right? Because right now, I think with Adams and Armstrong, it's not really working out. Adams has been struggling. I think with Ings going, that void has kind of come up, and it's a bit difficult for the Southampton team to kind of work without Ings right now, and I think that's definitely what they're missing. And with a few injuries here and there in the midfield as well, I think that's also not really clicking right now. But I think Livramento could still be a great option to go for. Of course, I have Cancelo, and I've already spoken about the Man City defense in terms of what options to go for. Of course, Diaz is number one. I've not gone for Diaz. I've gone for the slightly riskier Cancelo. I still feel he's nailed for now. I think he definitely plays majority of the Premier League minutes. In case if you are not okay taking that risk, if you feel that Cancelo might get benched, you might not have let's say if you don't have a proper bench, for example, right? You don't have a proper fourth or a fifth defender or even a fifth defender, or somebody gets injured by any chance, then you probably go with Diaz. I think there's the same value, I think 6.1, and I think both represent decent value. Diaz is also good for bonus points potential because of the pass completion rate, because of the amount of ball that City has, the amount of possession that they keep. Of course, those help in terms of bonus points. In terms of, let's say, if he makes any tackles, if he makes any recoveries and all of that stuff, I think that also helps in bonus. And I think Diaz generally gets among the bonus if City is not winning by 4 or 5 or that kind of a margin. So I think it's a decent defense. There is still some merit in probably going for an Arsenal defender again. I've not gone for an Arsenal defender because I've already have Ramsdale. I think a double up is a bit too much. I don't want to keep Shaw. In case if you have Shaw for this particular weekend, if you are on a wild card, I think there's merit in removing him from your team because you're looking at transfers long term, right? You're looking at picks long term. You're not really looking at players, and you're not booking. You should not book transfers in advance, right? So you would not really have Shaw in your team. Now, when you look at the likes of other teams, right? You have teams like Villa who have a couple of tricky games, who have Arsenal, Watford in game week 9, 10. Wolves again could be a bit trickier as well. Uh, Apart from that, you have options in Everton which aren't really great, to be honest. If you have if you have someone like a Luca Digne, I think you can easily move him to a different defender, to at least a Chelsea defender, even a Rudiger or even a Christensen, right? If you probably a little tight on budget, you already have covered the Liverpool and Man City defense. Apart from that, there aren't really any other options. I won't really go near West Ham. I won't really go near Spurs, for example. Yes, Spurs also have a tricky run of fixtures and they've not been playing well. So I think in terms of defense, this is an okay defense. I still feel the Aspilicueta versus Alonso could be a conversation or could be a thought that we'll probably think about a little more. And right now, very honestly, I'm inching towards Aspilicueta a bit more, considering that I already have the likes of Cancelo in my team, and I probably want to mitigate that risk a little bit, right? So we'll take up a couple of questions in case if you have anything to add in terms of defenders, or if you have any questions for your team. Let's say if you're not wildcarding, if you are not if you just want to make a transfer, please feel free to add any questions or just comment in the section, right? Um, we we'll take up one or two questions here. James or Trent out for Rudiger? I think Hardik, it's I would probably keep Trent again, depending on what you're doing with your other team and what kind of transfers or what kind of players you have specifically. I think I would probably go and take out James right now. Yes, he might come back in a couple of weeks, but I think with Rudiger you get that security of starts. You get that surety that he's gonna play 90 minutes. Yes, he's not gonna give you attacking threats or any sort of attacking return, but I still feel there's good merit in keeping Trent. And I think if you're not wildcarding, for example, if you're not punting, for example, I think Rudiger would be the one. James would be the one to go to kind of take out for Rudiger, right? Alonso, Aspi, Praveen, again, I kind of already covered this. Aspilicueta is safer. Aspilicueta is more nailed. He has definitely less attacking potential when you talk about goal threat. He doesn't have a lot of goal threat. Yes, if you compare the creative threat from both Aspilicueta and Alonso, I think that is where probably Aspilicueta can come near Alonso a little bit. But I think in general with Alonso, you're getting that 10-15 point pointer, right? Which I think Aspilicueta might not give you. But again, there is also a risk involved, right? Because with these easier games and with, I think Chilwell is definitely not a player who's not going to feature at all, right? It's very hard to believe that Chilwell would be a player who would not be used by Tuchel, considering that Chelsea has so many games, considering that Chelsea has two great options, two great replacements, or two great picks to go for in that position, right? So with Alonso, you get that risk, but I think you can easily go for someone like an Aspilicueta. He's a differential. He's gonna give you those clean sheet points. If he plays right wing back, right, I think that is where you can also possibly get an assist or possibly get him into the bonus points. But I think if you don't have the appetite for that risk taking, if you are playing safe, I think Aspi is the one to go for. Otherwise, Alonso, if you're punting for a week, if you want to just try your luck and see what happens with Alonso, and if anyways wildcarding in game week 8, right? I think Alonso could be a great option or a great replacement for someone like a James, like a Shaw, for example, right? I think that is a and I think that's a pretty cheeky move to kind of make, right? Where you, let's say if he plays that Southampton game, if he does pretty well, I think it'll be a great transfer, right? So depending on your risk appetite, depending on whether you're okay taking that chance, depending on what kind of players you have, let's say you already have the likes of Cancelo, you already have, for example, you have a Trent, or you have a Shaw, you cannot, of course, you cannot transfer them out, for example. Then probably avoid someone like an Alonso, because if he doesn't play and if you already have some problems in defense, I think you might not end up with 11 players on the pitch, right? So yeah, so it totally depends on you in terms of how you see and how you evaluate the game. For me personally, I'm going for Aspilicueta right now, but I might shift to Alonso. But again, I think I still think it's going to be Aspilicueta. Sile, I think I covered that. At 2 million is the money remaining in this particular draft to get Trent, and that transfer would be Aspilicueta to Trent when Trent returns. Um, yeah, so right now I've not gone for Trent. I think it's easier to not go for him when you're on a wild card. If you already have him in your team, if you have other fires to put out, if you are struggling with forwards or midfielders and all of that stuff, I think just benching Trent for this game week, which was anyways a tough fixture, I think that's an okay transfer or okay move to make or okay strategy to go for, right? So, but not having Trent also has its merits for a couple of games or for a single game, for example. But again, if you want to play with Trent, if you want to run that risk of not having Trent, then God help you, very honestly, because I think he's still probably a must-have, the only must-have defender right now, in my opinion. I think if he's of course if he's fit and if he's raring to go, I think you have to have him in your team. Edison worth considering, Mohan. I again, yes, he's gonna play majority minutes. Yes, Man City is the best defense right now, but I generally feel there's more attacking upside with someone like a Cancelo, even a Diaz, right? The kind of goal threat, the kind of attacking threat that he can have or can give you from set pieces, from corners. I think that is a better bet to have than someone like an Edison, who again probably won't give you a lot of save points, right? Because Man City don't concede a lot of shots, right? So when they're not conceding shots, there won't be shots on target. He won't be making saves, and he won't be probably even be getting into bonus points, right? So I think I won't really consider Edison. I think it's always easier to go for a budget option and just forget about your goalkeeping option, because of the lack of potential upside. Like Edison is not going to give you assists week on week, or probably even a goal, right? That's probably not going to happen. So I won't consider Edison, I think. Zora will take up the midfield questions in a bit. When we start talking about the midfielder, I think we'll just cover up the any sort of defender questions. Trusting on the Arsenal players too much can backfire, Akshat. Again, not really, not really knee jerking on that game. against Tottenham, but I still feel there is value in that defense. I still feel there's value in that keeper. Yes, of course, you don't start getting a triple up or you don't start getting the likes of Aubameyang, etc. in your team, but I still feel there is value in there, and it could be a good move as well, right? Because I still don't think a lot of people would be considering Arsenal players. I think you can still get ahead of the curve. Arsenal fixtures are okay; they're not that tough, right? They're playing Brighton, Crystal Palace, Villa, which is a home fixture. Then they have Leicester, which is away. Then they have Watford and Newcastle home in 11 and 13, right? So I think when you calculate this, I think four fixtures out of the next six fixtures, right? They are at home, and I think Arsenal at home could be decent. And I think if you consider that, there is good value in that attack as well, right? Because right now there are so many options in and around that 5.5 to 6.5 million bracket that you really can take your pick, right? And you can easily make a case for some other midfielder. You can easily make a case for an XYZ midfielder, which is probably not in my consideration, right? So I think yes, not knee jerking it. If you knee jerking, if you feel that now suddenly ESR, Saka, Tierney, and all of those players will start giving you double digit hauls, of course that's not going to happen. But I think if you take a calculated risk, if you try to take a few chances, which I generally would, because I'm a risk taking manager. I'm not someone who plays very safe. So again, it totally depends on what kind of manager you are, what kind of moves do you make, and how do you play the game, right? If you're a very safe manager, then probably Arsenal's not something that you would probably look at. You would probably go with someone like a Rafinha, for example, who's a lot more nailed than, let's say, someone like an ESR, which might not be a fair comparison as well, because the price is also different, right? But I think overall, Arsenal is still a team where you can invest at least in one player, if not more. Um, I didn't get Rudiger. I think I'm not sure. I think I did get him before the price rise. I think I did. Sahil. So yeah, because I had activated the wildcard on Sunday itself, right? So I think I did. I did catch up that price rise. Um, we'll take up the Ronaldo, Salah, and all those questions later. So worth it. Yeah, I think I feel it's a great move. I think it's a risky one for sure, but I think it could give you decent points. Actually, you're saying when both goalkeepers face teams who concede a lot, that's the time your goalkeeper. Yeah, like again, of course clean sheet is a huge criteria for going for a goalkeeper or for selecting a goalkeeper, but you also kind of see what kind of teams concede a lot of chances, concede a lot of shots, but they're probably not conceding those many goals. Someone like a Brentford, for example, or even an Arsenal, for example, right now, right? So and those could be decent options. Rotating goalkeepers have worked for you so far, Craig. Again, if it has, I'm glad. But from a personal experience, from a personal perspective, I think it's just one more headache to have in your game. Because again, I as a manager try to simplify the game as much as possible. I don't really like to make knee-jerk reactions or knee-jerk transfers. My transfers or my moves have been very well thought over the years. So I generally try to act on a lot of information, on as much information as possible. So I try to make the game a little simple, and I don't want to take that goalkeeper headache. I still feel there is value if you can get that upgrade. Let's say, for example, you had someone like a Boemo, for example, right? And or let's say if you had a player which was 5.8, probably let's say like a Ducore or Gray, they've done decently well. But let's say if you have a player which is 5.7, 5.8, and you had that option of upgrading that player to a SAR, for example, right? Who's at least for the last 2 weeks or probably even this week as well, I think he'll do really well. So if you compare that against two rotating keepers, of course you cannot play both keepers in one game week. Only one goalkeeper is going to play. Now, if you consider that with a goalkeeper, you would have gained 6-7 points, but with someone like a SAR, for example, I think you would have gained a lot more, right? So similarly, if you look at FPL, or if you look at the strategy from this perspective, I think having that additional money and investing it in a different player, or a player who could give you a better attacking return, I think has more upside, right? Of course, that goalkeeper or that rotating goalkeeper could give you that clean sheet, but how much would that clean sheet be, right? It would be 6 points or even 7 points, for example. If it's, let's say, like a very close game, it'll be an 8 to 9 pointer, which is not the case in major weeks, right? You probably end up with only 6 points. So I think the upside with the other move whether investing in a midfielder or even an attacker, I think that's a better play. But fair play. If you feel that it has worked for you, I think fair point. Is Ramsdale nailed? I think he's nailed for the next few weeks for sure. I think it'll take a special disastrous performance from Ramsdale to kind of not be in the mix, for starting. I think he's nailed. I think he's done pretty well, and I think he should be Arsenal's number one for sure. What do you think of Kilman? Not sure. I would take him out for sure. If I have him, I think I'll look at other options. How much is Skillman? I think he would be in the 4 to 4.5 million range. I'm not sure how much is Skillman. Just have a look. But because Skillman is again not gonna give you. Yeah, so yes, he's playing 90 minutes, but does he really have a lot of attacking upside? I don't think so. Is Wolves gonna keep clean sheets? And they're facing Newcastle, which again might not be a clean sheet because Newcastle has been a really good attacking team this season. Villa again, they are attacking well. Leeds again, they are a good attacking team. Everton maybe might be a close one. Palace again, with the way they're playing, I think there is good attacking potential from Palace. West Ham is also a good attack. Norwich again, you could keep a clean sheet. Then Burnley in 14. So there are not really a lot of games where Wolves will give you clean sheets, right? So I think if you consider that, I think having someone like a Semedo is okay because he has attacking upside, he has attacking potential. But I would not really keep Kilman. I think there are better options to go for. You can go for someone like a Ben White, for example. You could go for someone like a Tomiyasu, who's again in the similar price range. You could also go for a Brighton option like a Duffy, for example, or a Livramento, who are cheaper. So I think there are better options that you can go for in that 4.5 million price range. And I think I would not keep Kilman. If you don't have a priority transfer, if you don't have anything else to do, I think you could transfer him out. I've kind of covered Alonso, so I think I won't take more Alonso questions. Yeah. So again, just to kind of summarize, I think there are chances that Alonso can get benched. Chilwell would be getting minutes. That is an absolute surety. So if you're okay taking that risk, because if you feel that that's probably a transfer down the line that you don't want to make, then probably go with someone like a Rudiger if you are only going with one player, or if you don't have money, you go for Christensen. But again, I would probably go with Rudiger, who's a little more nailed. Aspilicueta is a yellow card magnet. Yeah, there are chances that he gets a yellow card, but again, there's also a good chance that he can get an attacking. So again, it depends on how you look at things, right? There's also a good chance that he can get an attacking return, or has assist potential as well. So it kind of offsets it. Yes, the yellow card would be a bummer in terms of losing that 1 point and also losing those bonus points in case if he's very close in terms of getting those bonus points. Um, Sahil, your question's pretty great. I think Semedo's attacking output nullified by Wolves' poor conversion rate. I think yes, to an extent it has. He's been unlucky in terms of his returns, considering how Wolves have finished, and they've been very bad in terms of finishing. Right, whether you talk about Traore, whether you talk about Trincao, or even Raul Jimenez, I think there's a good chance that Semedo would have probably gotten at least 10 to 12 points more than what he has right now. It gets nullified to an extent if Wolves don't finish, or if their attackers have an off day. Considering that now Wolves have started to play a little better in terms of their attack. I was pretty happy with Jimenez getting that goal, and I think that would probably break shackles. And I think you if you saw that game, if you saw that moment, I think it was a great moment if you're a football fan, right? I think there are chances, or there have been chances where Jimenez, and we'll kind of cover Jimenez in a little more detail. But I think there have been moments where he's done well. He's taken shots from inside the box, from outside the box as well, but he's not finished well, right? But I think with that goal, he'll get a lot of confidence. I think the fixtures are good, so I still feel having Semedo is okay with the attacking potential, or with probably Wolves finishing a little better, because Adama Traore, we know that Adama Traore is not a clinical finisher, right? He's missed a lot of chances. Jimenez in general has been great over the past few seasons. Even if you see, the last few seasons, yes, he's got those 7, 8, probably 6 pointers on a consistent basis, but he's been clinical for Wolves, right? If Wolves is winning 1-0, it's been Jimenez who finishes or he who gets that, goal. So I think there's merit to keep Semedo. If you have Marcel, probably I would move him on, because Marcel has had a couple of off games. I think there's a good chance that 8 Nuri can finally take that place, and Marcel could get dropped. So there's that chance, but I think Semedo is nailed, and I think in that price range you have Tierney as well, who's a lot more injury prone. Plus, if you already have Ramsdale, or if you already have another Arsenal defender, I think you would probably not go for Tierney. So I think in that value, I think Semedo is a decent option. Why hasn't Stones been playing? I think so. Stones, of course, when the game started, I think he was not match fit. He was not fit. Laporte was in decent form. Had a good preseason as well. I think that is where Pep kind of started. And I think a lot of people expected Laporte to be the first choice pairing with Diaz last season as well, right? It was not the case last season, but I think that was always Man City's first choice pairing. Now, Pep generally likes to play with those two fixed centre backs, right? Yes, we've seen some certain rotation with Stones and Laporte last season, and I think that could also happen this season as well. But even if you remember the last season's beginning, right? I think it was a lot more it was a lot more closer in terms of who's going to start, because it was Stones who was consistently getting that game time with Diaz, right? Now it's Laporte, and I think that's probably not going to change in the league. I still feel, Laporte is going to play, and I think Stones, who was a good option probably in before the season started, right now is of course not. I don't really see him even coming back into the team anytime soon. Yes, there could be certain rotation around Christmas in December, where you have a lot of games, especially around Boxing Day, and that kind of a time period. But I think right now, Stones, it's difficult for him to, like it's tricky for him to get those minutes now, considering how Laporte and Diaz have been playing, and their numbers have been phenomenal, right? Their numbers have been great, and I think Pep would want to keep that ticking, keep that centre back pairing at least consistent across the next few weeks. Um, so yeah, so I think we'll see if we have a couple of more things. If Trent's injury is long term, thoughts on other Liverpool defenders. I think I personally don't feel Trent's injury is long term. But in case, if let's say again, we cannot shut out that possibility, right? If we get to know that Trent is probably out for 3 to 4 weeks, or probably even more, for example, which I personally don't think so. But let's say if that happens, then I think you can go for. It's difficult because Simicas is probably not going to feature, right? You'll have Milner. Milner played against Porto, and you won't see Milner playing majority of the games or majority minutes or week in week out. Generally, what we've seen so far is it's always from Trent's side where Liverpool has attacked the most. Of course, he's also a great crosser of the ball. He's also a great attacker. He's probably a better attacker than Robertson. Robertson in general over the season, and probably over the second half of last season as well, I think stays a lot further behind. Also is probably not on set pieces as often as you would probably have expected. Whether it's corners, whether it's free kicks. I think Trent is that major set piece magnet, or somebody who will get you that likely assist. So I think then you have Van Dijk, who has good aerial threat, but again, Liverpool's clean sheet potential is kind of gone down a bit. Their defense right now, yes, it's still probably in the top five defenses in the league right now in terms of underlying stats, but I still feel I would probably move towards the Chelsea and the Man City defense. I think there's great value there. They are the two elite defenses, right? So I probably won't go for any other alternate if let's say Trent is injured long term, because with Trent again, I'm not really keeping a check on the number of clean sheets that Trent would be getting you, right? It's a lot more attacking potential. It's a lot more attack which I'm focused on, where I'm getting Trent, I'm getting those crosses in, I'm getting those balls in, I'm getting those assists in, right? I might even get a goal or two from free kicks, from set pieces, etc. So I'm more focused on that rather than the clean sheet potential for Liverpool and for Trent in particular. So I think considering that there's better value in the Man City and Chelsea defense, I'll probably not go with any other uh, defenders per se. Cool. Replacement for Marcel if we have an Arsenal goalkeeper. So if you, again, depending on how much money you have, how much budget you have, if you have an Arsenal goalkeeper, I probably won't go for another Arsenal player. Yes, Arsenal is in that budget category when you talk about the defensive value, the defensive numbers. So let's say if you have a 4.5, something around that sort of a budget, and you're looking for a defender, there are some decent options to go for. You can go for Livramento, for example. I think if you're on a wild card, or if you're probably not even on a wild card, or probably this week maybe it's a tough one because they're facing Chelsea. But I think Livramento could be a serious option, which probably not a lot of people would consider. Right? He would be somebody like a Suchek, for example, who was last season's best benching option, right? Like he scored so many goals from the bench and from people's benches that not a lot of people were able to take advantage of someone like a Suchek, right? I think Livramento could be someone similar with that attacking potential, and probably Southampton keeping a few clean sheets with those easy fixtures. I think there is merit in getting somebody like a Livramento. I think if you want to go for a bit cheaper option, I think there's decent option elsewhere as well. I think I won't look at Crystal Palace. I won't even look at Leeds. I think if you want to consider, you can of course go for Duffy, who's also an able replacement. Yes, Brighton have some tricky fixtures. They have Man City, Liverpool, but they are also playing Norwich, Newcastle, Villa, Leeds. So I think it's a mix depending on who you have or who are you playing. If you want a player, I think Livramento is probably the best option in that cheaper option or cheaper category. I think he's the one to go for. Great. I think we'll try to finish with the defenders. I think in terms of midfield, I think this is where things get very interesting. I think I'll cover different options and different picks now in midfield. Now midfield, I think one option, and I think I'll not talk about this in a lot more detail, or I won't cover this in a longer depth. I think it would be Salah. We don't really have to talk about him. He's a must-have. He's also a captainable option for most weeks. He's been playing really well. I think he's in great form. He's been doing really well in Champions League as well. So I think let's leave Salah aside because I think Salah is an essential player. I think you have to have him, and I think most people do have Salah already in their teams, right? So now, apart from that, there is a good debate on the other four spots, right? Because a lot has chopped and changed. A lot has changed since the arrival of Ronaldo for, let's say, Man United. A lot of people were, targeting Bruno as a great option, who was on penalties, who was on free kicks, who was United's talisman. I think a lot has changed there. You have the likes of Greenwood, Jota, who are tough options, who are tricky options, right? Because with Greenwood, his attacking potential has kind of come down. Last week was a bit weird because I think he took 7 or 8 shots. I don't remember the exact number, but I think he took 7 or 8 shots and probably inside the box in that game, right? And that's a massive number. So yes, he's not getting those attacking returns. Yes, there were signs he was a bit selfish in certain aspects of the game as well. But I think with Ronaldo coming in, all those options have kind of died down. I still don't feel Greenwood is a long term option. If you want to have him, keep him for a week. If you have other fires to put out, probably play him for one more week. He might start this week as well. But I think that spot is going to be very tricky to nail, considering that you'll have Rashford, you'll have Sancho as well, and if let's say United play with Pogba on the left, which is probably Pogba's best position right now, considering how United has played so far in the season. I think the way he's played when he's played from the left, right. I think that's been the Pogba that we know or we've spoken about or we think of, right. And I think United has been able to get maximum from Pogba when he's playing on that left side. So that really, keeps a lot of options on the right, where you have the likes of Lingard as well, right? Because now he's not going anywhere. Lingard could also play or could also trim off or share some minutes on that right side. So I think Greenwood is not an option for the longer term. If you are on a wild card, you definitely get rid of him. If you are not on a wild card and if you don't have any other priority transfers, then I think you ship him out. If you have other fires to put out in defense, for example, then probably he's okay for this week. He looks okay for this week. I think Everton it could be a tricky game if Benitez tries to shut shop and tries to sit back and defend deep. But I think he's an okay option to hold for at least 1 week, if not more. Now, talking about other options, I think other sort of nailed options. I think Rafinha is definitely the best 6.5 or the budget midfield option in that category. I think with him you're getting a good attacking output. He's been a lot better in terms of finishing. Yes, he still missed a lot of chances. He's still missing shots. He's still not finishing as much as you would want him to. But I still feel in that price bracket with the kind of returns and with the kind of goal threat that he's having, I think he's a good option to go for. Uh, he could be a set and forget option as well because see, if you look at Leeds fixtures, right, they're not really very tricky. You have Watford, Southampton, you have Wolves, Norwich. Then games get a bit tricky from game week 11, where Leeds face Leicester, Tottenham, Brighton again. Those are teams that are not really great in terms of defenses right now, right? Leicester is struggling right now. Maybe after Johnny Evans comes in, I think things could change. But I think yes, you would want to keep Rafinha, and you would want to have him in your team, especially when he's playing these weaker defenses. So I think Rafinha is also one that's pretty close to nailed. Now there are some doubts in terms of his starting this particular week, considering the international break, considering that he might play for Brazil, considering that he might be injured as well, right? He's been playing with an injury for the last couple of weeks. He's been flagged, but he's still been playing. And I still feel if he's available to play against Watford, I think he will play this week. And I think if you have him, you don't sell him. If you are trying to replace someone like a Greenwood or a Jota, or you want to get a 6 to 6.5 sort of a player in that price range, I think Rafinha is the one to go for. I think you will you will get insane number of those statistics for a 6.5 million midfielder are actually crazy, right? So, and you would want to target that, you would want to have that. So Rafinha is definitely there. Then I think is where things get a bit tricky because you don't really have a lot of options in midfield who are in the mid to premium category. Now, yes, Fala has also mentioned that Grealish is a nailed starter, and there is a good run of fixtures coming up. Grealish is an option that you can target, right? Because yes, he's been playing okay. If you've seen City, if you've seen their games, if you've seen how they've played in the recent matches, I think a lot has been going through Grealish. In terms of direct play or in terms of direct threat, I think he looks like one of the most uh, I would say the most likely to kind of get something from the game. Yes, he's taken a bit of a time to kind of get settled in terms of the team because it's a new team, right? It's and he's playing with these players. Of course, he's an elite player. He's playing with an elite team as well. With the kind of quality you would expect him to do, to start giving you returns. And I think his numbers have looked pretty average, to be very honest. His goal involvement numbers are probably less than about 20%, which is very low for somebody like a Grealish, considering what he did with Aston Villa, right? Of course, Aston Villa was a different setup because he was Aston Villa's talisman, and City has at least 6, 7 players, maybe even 8 players who can score a goal for them, right? So, and that is where the problem kind of comes in. But I still feel, he's nailed. I think it's his spot to lose. Now, a lot of people are, talking about the likes of Phil Foden coming back, KDB coming back, even the likes of, let's say, Sterling probably playing on the left, which I don't see happening. But I still feel with these players kind of coming in with Champions League, with cup games and all that stuff coming in, I think Grealish still gets majority of the minutes. Yes, with Pep, you can't really say. I still feel that you can't say that he's nailed, right? Because we've seen what Pep has done in the previous games, in the previous season as well. We were very confident about a certain Ferran Torres, right? I think a lot of people are very bullish about Ferran Torres playing that number 9 role, probably playing on the right side, competing with the likes of Mahrez. And Mahrez, right? Mahrez has been that example where we've seen with him that people start believing that Mahrez would be a regular starter, would be nailed, uh, would be a regular feature in that setup. I think with Grealish, it could be a similar story right now. Again, don't quote me on this later, but I still feel there are chances, or there is a decent chance that he can get a few games where let's say a Foden, for example, plays, or let's say if he doesn't play on the left, or if he gets benched, Sterling plays on the left, and Ferran Torres is probably playing as a false nine. We saw Phil Foden also playing as a false nine. So right now, City is kind of going with any kind of player to play that false nine role. We've seen KDB also playing that. So it's a bit tricky, I think, with Grealish. The underlying stats are okay; they're not great. The fixtures are absolutely, magnificent from an attacking perspective. I think Liverpool's going to be tricky. So if you're planning to get him this week, I think you can hold off for at least a week. With Burnley, Brighton, Crystal Palace, Everton as well. United could be a tricky game, but again, West Ham defensively has been very poor, so you would probably expect City to at least score a goal, if not more, in that game. And Grealish could be among, you know, he could be the one who could get that assist or probably even get that goal. Right now, it's looking a bit tricky, but I think if you are on a wild card specifically, and if you're playing your wild card next week, I think he's a decent option to go for. For this week as well, I think because of the lack of options. See, if you have a Grealish, if you have a certain Grealish, who's about 8 million, right? Uh, is he 8 or is he more? Right. We'll just check that once. So if you have someone like a Grealish, who's obviously a little more in price, right? You can always come down. Yeah, he's 8 million. So you can always come down to someone like a Gallagher, like a Buemo, or or a Rafinha. If you don't have Rafinha by any chance, which is a must, I think you can come to that category as well. So I think there's a decent chance that you can downgrade if the Grealish move is not working out. If you feel that he's probably not getting those returns, he's getting chances, he's creating chances, but he's not getting those FPL points, if if you want to put it that way. And then you can probably move on to a different player. But I think there's a certain element of risk involved in that move. I think if you're already taking a chance with someone like an Alonso, someone like a Cancelo, for example, I think there is good merit that you probably look at different options. You look at other options instead of Grealish. Now, if you look at that similar price range, of course, you have the likes of Kai Havertz, who I don't see being nailed in that Chelsea team. Now, apart from that, if you want to go for Mount, Mount is again somebody who would give you points. I think he will give you decent points, but I still don't feel that he's gonna be very explosive. He's gonna give you that double-digit hauls. Yes, we've seen that he ticks along really nicely. He gives you those 6, 7 pointers in most games. But I think the plus right now he's flagged, so I'll probably avoid someone like a Mount. If you have Jota, of course, you won't be getting in Jota or Greenwood if you are on a wild card. But if you're playing a wild card, I think there's a decent chance that you can go for someone like a Buemo or someone like a Gallagher, for example. I think yes, they're quite cheap. They are in the 5.5 to 6 million price packet, and you don't expect these players to kind of take the scene apart and give you consistent double digit hauls like a Salah, for example, right? There's a reason they're priced so low, and they're playing for certain teams which might not give you goals week on week, right? So that also has an element of risk involved. But if you look at the likes of Brentford, if you look at the likes of Palace, I think these are decent teams, and the likes of Buemo and Gallagher, I think they are standout options from these teams. I think specifically when you talk about Gallagher, I think Palace has looked a lot better in terms of their attacking potential this year. I think Vieira has kind of understood the system, understood the setup right now, and I think he's doing a decent job. I think Gallagher specifically, if you ask me, I think Gallagher could easily start in that Chelsea mid as well, right? Because the way he's playing for Palace, being their talisman and trying to get forward as much as he can, try to make those runs. He was also on set pieces. I think till now he's been on set pieces, but I think Milivojevic, I think that's the name of the player. Uh, Sorry if I got that wrong, but I think with him coming back, those set pieces might be shared or might not be on Gallagher, and I think that could be something to watch out for. But I think with fixtures, and he's played tough fixture, right? The West Ham game could have been a tricky one, but West Ham defensively have been a bit poor. He got that 15-point haul. Then Tottenham, he got 8 points, and Brighton he's got an assist as well. Leicester, do you really hold the Leicester team very highly right now? Because I don't think so. Evans is going to come back in this game week, in game week 7. I think the partnership of Soyuncu and Vestergaard, I think that's I don't believe that I'm saying this, but I think that's a disaster waiting to happen because I don't know. They need someone like an Evans to hold the fort and try to calm things because Vestergaard and Soyuncu they're kind of very similar in terms of their stature, in terms of how they play, in terms of their movement, etc. Right? And you need a calm head in that defense. You still need someone like a Johnny Evans with all that experience to kind of come in and settle that defense. I think Gallagher could take advantage of that for this week. There's a good chance that he can get something against Newcastle in game week 9 as well. Arsenal is also a decent game. Yes, Man City, you don't play him in game week 10, but then you have Wolves, Burnley, and Villa, and then 14 you have Leeds, right? So the overall run I think is pretty good. If you can easily chop and change, you can easily switch him to a different to a different attacker or to a different midfielder, for example, in that price range. Of course, you have Buemo, who has who also has decent fixtures coming up. I think West Ham Chelsea is going to be tricky. West Ham I don't really consider to be a very difficult game. I think West Ham could be one where Brentford could score goals. If you guys saw that Liverpool game, right? I didn't expect Brentford to be that attacking, right? I generally expected them to sit back, defend, and try to keep it very tight against Liverpool. But it was a very open game, probably one of the best games of the season so far, right? And there's a good chance that with the West Ham defense, which is also pretty open, and West Ham with the likes of Antonio, Benrahma, and all those players, they would definitely attack, right? There'll be a lot of spaces that will be left behind, and the likes of Tony, the likes of Buemo, especially their partnership which has been doing decently well. I think there's a decent chance that Buemo gets something from that game. Chelsea again, I don't expect him to do a lot against Chelsea, but then you have Leicester, Burnley, Norwich, Newcastle, and I think these are great fixtures to target, right? So I've seen a lot of people not going strictly against the likes of Buemo, Tony, and all of those, and at least these two players from Brentford. But I still feel there is value in that Brentford attack. A double up might be a bit too much, but I still feel there are decent options that you can go for. I think they both look okay. You can rotate them with someone like a Gallagher, for example, and you play the easier fixture and the player who has the easier game. But I think there is definitely value in getting someone like a Buemo. I think with that price bracket that he's in, right? The only concern that I have with him is that with 5.5, you don't really have a lot of other options, right? So now you're tying up to a 5.5 million midfielder where you don't really have a lot of alternatives. Of course, you have the likes of Emil Smith Rowe, but with Emil Smith Rowe also, I'm a little concerned with his playing time. He might not be as nailed as a lot of people are thinking, right? I think Saka would be a lot more nailed if you look at the Arsenal attack. Of course, Oba plays most games. Odegaard also plays in that number 10 role. I think he's adjusted life at Arsenal really well, and I think he's playing decently in that number 10 role. You would expect probably Pepe to take off some minutes from the likes of Emil Smith Rowe. I think Emil Smith Rowe still starts majority of these games, but he could be off for an early sub. He could be off at 60, 65 minutes or even 70 minutes, where Pepe gets the rest 20, 25, or probably even half an hour, right? And I think that is where the likes of Emil Smith Rowe's potential kind of dies down for me. I think Saka is the more nailed option. Yes, Saka has never really taken the stage apart in terms of FPL. Even last season, where he was a potential option, he wasn't really getting those assists, wasn't really getting those FPL points, those goals. I think this season it could be a little different. Again, I'm not knee jerking. I'm not really reacting to one performance from Arsenal, which was against Tottenham. I think things could still look a bit different, and this might come back to bite people who are backing the Arsenal attack. But I think at 6 million, you're not really taking a lot of risk, right? Let's say if I was going for someone like a Mane, for example, who's a premium option, who's 11, 11 and a half, 12, that category, right? And he's not performing and he's not giving me points, or he's giving me less points, or I feel that he's not valued, right? Then that is a risk that I have taken and it's not really paid off, and I would be losing a lot more, right? Because I'll be making sacrifices in my team in other spots. But with the likes of a 6 and a 6.5 million midfielder, you it's not really taking a lot of risk, right? Because there are certain options that you can go for. There's also players from different teams that you can go for. You have the likes of Rafinha, who's been getting goals as opposed to last season. So you have options when you consider the Saka price range, right? The Emil Smith Rowe bracket might be a bit tricky, where you don't really have a lot of options. Yes, you have Buemo, you have Gallagher, but yes, they could be potential options, but they could also blank in the next few weeks, right? And that's a risk that you take. It's of course a risk, but at 6 million at that price point, I think it's not as risky as probably going for a premium and then failing, right? So I think Buemo, Gallagher both look decent. I think the fixtures are there. They're playing. They are the standout picks from their teams. I think most attacks in Palace would go through Gallagher, and he would be, at the forefront of any attacking threat that comes from the Palace team, which is getting better every game week. With Buemo, I think that partnership with Tony is very crucial, and I think he's got chances. He's also one player who's played really well in actual football and actual footballing terms, but who's not translated those performances into FPL points. And I think that is where us managers or managers who went for him in the initial stage kind of struggled and uh, shifted away from him. And I think at the kind of ownership that he's having right now, I think he's going to be a great potential and a great differential as well. So I think Buemo, Gallagher are good options to go for. If you want to go for someone else, you have Saka as well. I'm not really very high in terms of Emil Smith Rowe because I feel that there are decent chances that he might get shared minutes with Pepe, right? So Odegaard also Odegaard again is it's not an option for me, very honestly. If I really am targeting that price range, I think he might be more nailed than Emil Smith Rowe, but I still feel if I'm targeting that price point, I probably might go with a higher upside in Emil Smith Rowe, right? Emil Smith Rowe is a player who could give you those double-digit returns. He has that in him, right, where he can get a goal and assist, which he did against Burnley. He got those 11 points, so he has that in him where he could give you those higher or those the major chunk of points. So Odegaard might not be an option if you're considering the Everton midfielders. I think there are a lot of people. In fact, I also had Demari Gray in my team before the wild card. So I think Everton has had great games. I think their fixtures were pretty good. Southampton, Leeds, Brighton, Burnley, Villa, Norwich. They were excellent fixtures. We've had the likes of Decore, we've had the likes of Townsend, who's also hauled. We've also had Demari Gray, who's got a couple of hauls. But I feel now the fixtures get a bit tough. United, West Ham is going to be tricky. Then you have Watford, Wolves, two okay games. Then you have Tottenham, Man City, Brentford, Liverpool, Arsenal, Palace, Chelsea, Leicester. So I think that run it's a bit tricky, and I think right now if you are on a wild card, you might not get, or you shouldn't probably get an Everton midfield. I think they're better options. The likes of Buemo and Gallagher, I feel, are better picks than the likes of Dokore, Gray going forward. Forget what happened in the past, or forget the first 5-6 weeks. Of course, you can't really ignore the entire play there, but I still feel there's better value in the other picks that are there, and I think you could go for these options instead of the Everton boys. Now, if you don't have a wild card, or if you're not playing a wild card, what to do with these players, right? Let's say if you first of all, if you have a priority transfer to make in defense, if you have the likes of Shaw, if you have the likes of James, I've seen teams which has Shaw, James, Trent as a back three, right? And that is where things get a bit tricky. So if you have those kind of transfers to make, I think there is better or good potential there, and prioritize those transfer moves. If you don't really have any transfers to make, right, and if you also are not making that Ronaldo to Lukaku switch, we'll kind of cover that. I think I think it's okay to hold them probably for a week or two, or or again, if you don't have any other transfers to make, I think there's better value. If you want to take a punt for a week, then you can go for someone like a Sar. And Isa just mentioned, what about Sar? So Sar is also there in a lot of teams, and if you're taking a 1 week punt, and if you're probably wildcarding in game week 8, for example, right? Sar against Leeds, I think it's a great option to go for, considering it's a 1 week punt. If you already have Sar, of course you hold him. But if you, in case if you want to take a punt, or if you want to transfer those out, I think the likes of Buemo, Gallagher, I think against these teams could be a better option than someone like a Gray or a Dokore against a United or a West Ham. West Ham probably not, because I think their defense is slightly weaker than what it was last season. But I still feel you know if there's no transfer to make, I think you can take them out for a different midfielder. If at all you are comfortable playing them, and if you feel that they're okay and I have other fires to put out, I think they're okay. United could be a tricky game, but then West Ham, Watford, Wolves is okay. It's not the best, but I think they're still okay games, and you can probably wait out those moves. If you have other players to play, if you have other defenders to play, you can also play a back four, benching the likes of Ducore or even Gray in those weeks, right? So So I think again, totally depends on your transfers and your team as a whole. Sar is somebody who I've not considered on a wild card because my idea of having a wild card or doing a wild card is doing it for longer term, right? I don't want to get in players which I already am planning to transfer out. I think that's not the right strategy to have on a wild card. For example, if you have Sar again, as I said, as I mentioned earlier, you hold him for this week. If you don't have him and you're playing a wild card, I don't really see a lot of merit in getting him because yes, he plays Leeds and Leeds could concede a couple of goals or maybe because if you consider Sar, I think he is Watford's talisman, right? If Sar is having a great day, I think Watford is doing well. If he's struggling, then I think the whole Watford team struggles, which is a bit worrying, right? Because that whole team is dependent on that one player, and if that one player doesn't perform, whether even if it's a great fixture, right? If Sar doesn't perform, I think the whole Watford team is not capable enough to create or make the way for Sar to get some returns or get some goals or assists. I think so that's my problem. So on a wild card, I'll probably avoid Sar. Yes, there's one fixture that you can target, but then the run becomes very tricky, and I think that is where you actually this is the actual time to kind of get him off rather than get him in, right? So I won't consider Sar. I think as I mentioned with the Everton boys as well, I think there are better picks to go for. Uh, in terms of Man City, and Akshat just mentioned this, I think thoughts on Ferran Torres. And Torres is somebody that I was very bullish and very high, and I held him in very high regard when I spoke about when we were talking about Man City in game week 2, 3, 4, and those across those weeks, and he looked the part, right? It looked like Man City's probably gotten the code right, and then they're probably going to play Ferran Torres as a false nine, as their number nine. But that's not been the case because and it's a bit strange, right? Because Pep really played him or really was praising him a lot in the media, in the press. There was a lot of conversation, a lot of talk about how Ferran Torres could really take off the Man City stage this season, but that has not really happened, to be very honest, right? He's got a decent run in, and now he's nowhere to be seen, right? And now, if this week, for example, if this particular week he doesn't feature at all, if he doesn't start, I think I would not really consider him as an FPL option anymore because I think he's fallen into the trap of that Pep roulette, and I think it's 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 a bit tricky, right? Like I would not really go with Ferran Torres. I think if you really want to go for a Man City player, I think there is really Grealish to go for. Whether you would want to invest that 8 million and get a asset who could be risky or who could have shared minutes, maybe not. Again, totally depends on what kind of picks you're going for, what kind of manager you are, and how do you see Man City playing out the next few weeks, and who do you see in Man City playing out? Who do you see in City who plays or who gets the maximum minutes, right? So all depend on that, and I think I personally won't go for Torres. If you have Torres, I think it's the time to sell him. I think a lot of people have already sold him in their teams, and they've gone for someone like a Rafinha. They've also gone for someone like a Greenwood or a Jota. Jota owners were a bit unlucky, and then they kind of got a return last game week, which was quite nice to see. But I think in general, I would not go for Torres. I would you know I would probably look elsewhere. Ankit, you're saying you've kept Ferran for last two games. So yeah, so again, it totally depends on yeah, that's true. Like if you can't really miss points when Man City score four or five, right? And I think in general you would want to go for a Man City attacker, very honestly, and I'll come to the forwards bit just a bit later. But I think if you really want to attack, I think Gabriel Jesus could also be a decent option, which I think nobody's talking about, right? And I think not a lot of people have also thought about Jesus as an option because you have the likes of Jimenez, you have the likes of Antonio, you have the likes of you have the likes of Lukaku, Ronaldo, and all of these players. So I think he's also not getting that deserved attention that he probably should. But I think it's I think it'll be a good move to kind of take off Torres and taking off Torres and getting Grealish is still kind of being in the same mix, right? Yes, I agree that you would not want to lose out on points when City have good fixtures and City really can score four or five goals, but again, do we really do you really think that Grealish is gonna play all the games, considering that there's Champions League as well? Of course, there's the international break, so players are getting rested. Of course, players who are playing would have that additional or those additional games as well. So I think all of those factors combined, there's a good chance that he might get injured as well. Again, anything can happen there, right? So probably if you don't have the likes of Rafinha, if you don't have, uh, you know, uh, yeah, specifically Rafinha, I think I would probably prefer that. If you already have the likes of Rafinha, if you want to really invest in a Man City player, I think Grealish is a risky one, but I think he's still a decent option to go for. His underlying numbers, I think, could improve. And I think the way he's played, I think there is a good chance that he can get assists, etc. But it's risky, right? So with Ferran Torres, you were already playing a riskier game. And with Grealish again, you might think that he might be more nailed. He definitely looks a lot more nailed. So the risk kind of comes a little lesser, but we've not really seen him hauling big or hauling huge, right? So I think considering that, if you're okay taking that appetite, or if you have that appetite for risk, I think that's okay. But I think I would, if you don't have Rafinha, I think I would definitely go with Rafinha, and I would try to get him first before getting any of these other players, right? Um, Stephen, you're saying Traore and Bamford to Rafinha and Jimenez. Should I transfer out James or Trent? So, so specifically Traore, Bamford is injured, by the way. We'll come to that, but Bamford is probably injured at least for the next couple of weeks, maybe even a month. Uh, could be that much time. At least looks at least injured for the next couple of weeks, if not more. So, so you're saying for your context, my other defenders are Livramento, which is ideal, okay. Tierney and Duffy, which is okay. Jota and Sa need to leave my team soon as well, but those are my priority transfers. So, yeah, Traore, I don't really. I think Traore could get minutes and could get majority minutes this game, because Podence also didn't do a lot to, tip the scale in his favor, and to give him a lot more consistency or consistent starts across the coming game week. So I think Traore is still one of the better players in that Wolves team. Yes, he's a very bad finisher, and I think all of us know that by now, that he cannot finish, right? So I think if you have Traore, a lot of people are okay, keeping him. But I think it's an okay move to make, especially when you are getting Rafinha. And if Rafinha is, again, he's okay, we know that he's okay, and he's like, he will be fine, and he will be, especially with Bamford out, I think he will be Leeds' talisman. Whatever Leeds is creating or attacking or scoring, right? I think majority of it is gonna come through Rafinha, and I think he's taken up that responsibility as well this season. So I think for that move, for that player, I think it's an okay transfer to make. Bamford looks like a slightly longer term injury, and I think with Jimenez, I think you're getting a player who is the main focal point of that Bulls attack. Again, Bulls have been very wasteful in attack. They've missed a lot of chances. They've not really been very clinical. But I still feel Jimenez is an okay move. I think I would make that move. Um, should you transfer out James or Trent for a -4? I won't do that. I personally won't do. Again, depends on who are you getting. I won't make that move for Trent, especially a hit for Trent. I think if you have priority transfers to make, you just bench Trent, and then till the time you don't get a clear and a concise set of information where Klopp says, or we get to know that Trent is out for 3 to 4 weeks or maybe even more. That's a different thing. But right now, I probably won't take a hit. Traore and Bamford to Rafinha and Jimenez looks okay. Um, Craig, you're also asking how many hits. I've only taken one hit so far, and my points are. Let me just check. I think I forgot to mention that in this screen. I have 441 points, and my rank is 37K. I think we kind of saw a drop from 27 to 37 last week, but I have 441 points, and 37K is the rank right now. Sai, you're saying if I've already covered this, verdict on Kovacic, yeah, we'll kind of cover a couple of more options, and we can move towards forwards. So Kovacic, I don't really see him as an FPL option. Yes, you would argue that he's played well. He's done okay. He's also got he had a great game as well. He's in fact among midfielders, he's the highest scoring midfielder right now at 5.2 million. Yes, he got that huge haul against Villa, which was a 13-point haul. But in general, I don't. So when people talk about Kovacic and people talk about the likes of Kante, for example, who's out with COVID right now, but when they talk about players like these from an attacking perspective, I really don't think so. Now there are two reasons for it, right? A Kovacic or a Kante, for example, or a Jorginho, for example, they won't be as attacking as someone like a Mount. Agreed, right? It's fairly obvious. They won't be even attacking. They won't be as attacking as someone like a Ziyech, for example, whenever he's playing. I won't go to Ziyech, but just to kind of give you a comparison, you won't really. Now that's the first reason. They're better attacking midfielders from Chelsea at a slightly higher price point. You have Mount, who would give you consistent points when he's fit and when he's playing. I think he's a decent option to go for. He's probably the only midfield option that I would go for among the Chelsea players. Now, with Kovacic, what you're doing, you're taking a Chelsea spot as well, right? Now, there are two strategies that people are playing right now. A lot of people are going with a Chelsea double up in defense along with Lukaku. That's a triple up on Chelsea, which is absolutely fair. The other point is that a lot of people are going for a Lukaku, for example, and they're trying to get in another attacker and get one defender, right? Because they're trying to see or trying to understand if Chelsea's attack could outscore that defense, which could be the case, but we've not really seen that so far because Chelsea's not a team right now who scores four, five, six goals, right? They don't hammer teams. So you again won't go or you won't get consistent goals from any midfielders or mostly attackers. Yes, Lukaku is the main focal point and he will still get those goals, he will still get those points, etc. But I still feel not having Kovacic, I think, is the wise call. I think there are better options to go for in the same price point as well, right? I would still probably prefer someone like an Emil Smith Rowe, who's slightly more risky in terms of starts, but would have a lot higher attacking output than someone like a Kovacic, right? You could also go for someone like a Buemo, who's slightly more expensive. So that there's a price difference of about 0.3, something like that among the two picks. But I probably won't go with Kovacic. Thoughts on Smith Rowe and Odegaard, Craig? I've kind of covered this, but just to kind of summarize it very quickly, Smith Rowe slightly risky, could share minutes with Pepe. When he's playing, I think he'll do well. I think he's an important piece in that Arsenal attack, and I think he clicks really well. He kind of reminds me of in fact you know of Ramsey when he kind of came in the Arsenal team, right? When he was, if you've seen Emil Smith Rowe, if you've seen Smith Rowe playing, he's making those late runs. He's making those runs where he can get the ball. He can also score. He scored that goal against Tottenham in a similar fashion, where he made that sudden run and he was able to score that goal. So there's a good chance that he can get something. He can get you points, but the downside would be that he might not be 100% nailed, right? So, but I would still say he's still a better option. He's still a more attacking option than the likes of Odegaard because with Odegaard, you get that creative potential, you get that creative threat, but he's still not a goal scorer. Odegaard is not a goal scorer, right? He will try to create chances for the likes of Saka, for the likes of Aubameyang as well. He might also come a little deeper to get the ball sometimes and play, diagonal balls and diagonal passes. Play the last man as well. So Smith Rowe better option. I think Saka. If I have to really rate all three, I think Saka, Smith Rowe, and Odegaard. That would be my order in terms of the Arsenal midfield. I think we've covered majority of the midfielders. Tottenham players are there. You have the likes of Son, but it's very difficult to kind of understand what Tottenham are doing right now because they're all over the place, right? We can't really trust Kane. Kane looks like a different player altogether. He wants to leave and all of that stuff. That's different. But yes, Son is sticking along okay. But in terms of his price and the kind of value that you can get with someone like a Rafinha, for example, or a 6 to 6.5, a different midfielder, I think that is immense as compared to someone like a Son right now, who's doing okay in the Tottenham team. But I still don't rely on the Tottenham team to grind results right now. I still feel there could be a couple of more shocks and a little more pressure on Nuno and Tottenham to do well. So I think I'll avoid that. In terms of Villa, I think you have the likes of Buendia, you have the likes of Bailey, who's right now injured but would be back. A lot of people are also asking me about Douglas Luiz, right? Because so if you are playing a fifth midfielder, if you're playing a fifth midfielder, and if you want a very cheap option, if you just want a bench filler, your idea is to play a 4-3-4-3 or maybe even a 4-4-2 for most weeks, and you're looking for a fifth option, I think Douglas Luiz could also be a decent pick. In the last 2 weeks, he looks like a nailed option in that Villa team. In the last two game weeks, he's got a couple of assists as well. He's he's creating chances. He's also creating potential for assists. He's got a couple of returns as well now. Yes, the fixtures are a bit tricky. Tottenham, Wolves, Arsenal, West Ham, not the best of fixtures. But if you're looking for a very cheap player, you might not even play him for majority of the weeks. I think Douglas Luiz could be a decent pick to go for. Apart from that, I think in terms of midfield, if you have Benrahma, again, you keep Benrahma probably, for this week or probably even a couple of weeks. But I think after that, if you're specifically on a wild card, right, against Brentford, you can keep him. Even against Everton, Tottenham, you can keep him. Villa also could be an option, but I think after that, it would be the time that I would definitely definitely, not want to have Benrahma. If you already have Antonio, I think a double up right now might be a bit too much considering the kind of value that is elsewhere. If you are in a wild card, I think you can look at other options. There are different or better options to go for. I think Benrahma is a sell on a wild card. If you don't, if you're not using a wild card, and if you don't have the likes of Rafinha, etc., prioritize them over Benrahma. Otherwise, just play him for the next couple of weeks and see what happens. I still feel he's done okay. Last game week, in fact, he got a bonus point as well. So you can see you can understand the level of involvement that he would have had, that he was able to get that one bonus point in spite of not really doing anything in the game. Right? He just got a 3 pointer and no assists and not even clean sheet points. So I think play him for a couple of weeks, then probably sell him. If you're on a wild card, then probably don't get him. Apart from that, you would not really want to have the likes of Jota or even Greenwood on a wild card. If you are not using your wild card, if you are just making a regular transfer or probably not making a transfer, I think Jota looks. I think Jota probably looks a little better now as compared to Greenwood. Greenwood, you would say Greenwood has probably is a little more assured in terms of starts, but I still feel his output after Ronaldo's arrival has kind of died down, and I think I won't have Greenwood for longer term. Probably a week, maybe a couple of weeks, but not beyond that. Let's see what fixture they have in game week 8. I think Leicester is okay, but I think after that Liverpool, Tottenham, Man City, Watford, Chelsea, Arsenal. I think that's a run where you can go for different players, go for like a Rafinha, for example, and then probably get rid of Greenwood. Jota, a lot of people are speculating that he played majority minutes in the Champions League game and he won't start this week. Yes, there's a high possibility that he doesn't start this week, considering that he's also playing for Portugal in the international break, and it's going to be a late game. He might be back a little later. He might not be as fresh as Firmino, who probably won't go for the international break, who won't play and who would get rested, who's also recovering from an injury, and I think looks okay. He did really well against Porto, so I think there's a high chance that Firmino gets the start, but Jota probably comes on for the last 10, 15, 20 minutes. Right. So if you have a priority transfers to make, if you have other fires to put out, just play Jota for this week. There's a high chance that I still don't feel that Klopp is going to play all four against a Man City team. I don't think so. I think Mane and Salah start along with Firmino. But I think in the Watford game he could start. There's a good chance that he can also start in the Brighton game. But I still feel if it's not a priority transfer, just play him this week. But if you don't have any other transfers to make, or probably if you are on a wild card, then I think he's the one who's also a sell for me. Uh, Sar, I've already mentioned. I don't think so. There are any other options that are probably worth talking. If I've missed anything, just let me know. But I think I won't really go with any Leicester players right now. Barnes or even Madison. I don't think so. I'll go there. Tielemans has started playing a little more advanced. Is creating a little better, creating a little more than what is expected. But has also got a couple of assists in the last two games. But I think Leicester, apart from Vardy, I think it's a very difficult call to take in terms of who you would want to go for from the Leicester team, and I would probably avoid Tielemans, considering that he's also in that 6 to 6.5 million price range. I think Zaha could also be an option, which not a lot of people are talking about. Uh, there is a chance that I think he's on penalties as well. I think he will be Palace's talisman. He's got a couple of returns in the last few games, and I think Maybe not now, considering that he's almost 7 million, and you probably are seeing at better options right now. Zaha could be a slightly longer wait and watch, which you probably see for the next 2 3 games. You see the Leicester game, you see the Newcastle game as well, and then they have like a good run of fixtures where you probably only have one tough game as Man United in game week 15, and there's a good run of fixtures where you can target a Palace attacker, right? If you don't fancy Gallagher, or if you feel that Gallagher is probably his output is reduced, and Zaha is doing really well, I think he could be an option at that time. But I think for now, it's probably a wait and watch. Right. So these were the teams, or these were the players, in fact, which we have in mind in terms of our wildcard. I think Buemo Gallagher. I think I'm pretty good, pretty set in terms of having them. I think they have decent fixtures. It gives me a chance to also play. I will also have Saka as well, right? Who has good fixtures. So I have Salah, Rafinha, Saka who have good fixtures, and then depending on whether I play the fourth midfielder, or I play the third, forward, I can switch and change accordingly. But I think it gives me flexibility in terms of playing the best player, or the best fixture of that particular week. So I think considering that, I think it's a decent team. In any other probably last season, or any other time, you would think that likes of Buemo Gallagher are it's a weird setup, but I think that's how it is turning out to be right now, with the options available, with the information available. I think these are the better picks to go for. Now a lot of people might go for Grealish, which is also absolutely fine. Everton boys, I would avoid if I'm on a wild card specifically, right? Cool. So we'll finish the forward discussion. I think then we'll probably open the floor for any questions or anything that you guys have. I think in terms of forwards, and this is very interesting because generally we've been having this conversation where we've kind of been in two camps, right? One is the Ronaldo camp, the other one is the Lukaku camp, and a lot of people were also in the mix where they thought of having both, along with the likes of Salah, maybe even Trent. And I've seen those teams, I've seen those drafts. Some people have also played with those players, and I think they've done okay. But I'm still firmly in the two premium, sort of a camp. I still feel the kind of stuff that we can do with only captain one of Ronaldo or Lukaku for most weeks, right? You can't captain both. You would only captain one, and I think the major benefit that you can really reap out of these two players, considering that their ownership is very high, is when you captain them, right? Because that's the differentiator. So last week, people who really who went for Ronaldo and didn't go for Salah or even Antonio, they were the ones to lose out. And I was in fact among the same camp where I had Ronaldo captain, and people who captained Antonio, people who captained Salah with a similar team got got points in the mid 50s, where I ended up getting probably 47, 48 points, something around that, right? And that was the difference between a green arrow and a red arrow. I had a slight red arrow. So I think it's a fair assumption to make, or it's a fair assessment to make in terms of going ahead with one of Ronaldo or Lukaku. I think that still gives you the best balance. Yes, you can still make a team. You can absolutely make a team with both. But I think there's a lot of value invested, which you can easily chop and change with a slightly heavier defense or a slightly heavy midfield. I think that is where I am generally falling right now. Now, I had Ronaldo for the better part of the time since he's started in the Premier League. I think he's done well. In general, United has being a United fan, and seeing their play. I think they're still not ticking along. I think with the entire game focused heavily on Ronaldo, and the likes of Bruno, the likes of Shaw, the likes of whether it's McTominay, Fred, or whosoever is playing in midfield, or even Greenwood, for example, right? They're still trying to feed in Ronaldo, trying to make him play, trying to see his movements, see his positions, and play around him, right? And then I think that is where we are kind of struggling a little bit, because our game is very one-dimensional right now, and I think with the attackers, with the kind of players that we have, I think the likes of Sancho has not really clicked so far. Of course, coming from a different league, a lot of pressure on him as well. All of that stuff is there, but we know his quality, right? He could be an option, and I think he would be an option a little later in the season. But right now, he's not really nailed that right spot, or even the left, where he could also play. So I think getting rid of Ronaldo and having Lukaku is an absolutely fair assessment and a fair strategy. I see a lot of people giving me slack or giving a lot of other content creators slack that how can you take out Ronaldo? He's an absolute essential. He's the world's best and all of that. I know that, right? Nobody is unaware of that point or those pointers, right? But it's just that with with Lukaku, with the kind of fixtures that Ronaldo has, with what Lukaku has, do I see Lukaku outscoring the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo? I definitely do, right? And I could be wrong as well, right? FPL is a very funny game, and football is also funny at times where you get certain things which are not expected, and you then have to kind of chop and change and make alternate plans and all that. But I still feel with the fixtures, with how Chelsea would play, with the teams that they're playing, I think there's a good chance that Lukaku outscores Ronaldo. Ronaldo is having a tough run of fixtures. Yes, he's Ronaldo. He can score against any team and all of that. But I still feel Lukaku would outscore Ronaldo in these coming games, and he's also a great captaincy option, right? Because if you see the next three or four fixtures for Lukaku, right? You have Southampton, you have Brentford, then you have Norwich in game week 9, and then you have Newcastle in game week 10, Burnley in game week 11. So all of these are great games. All of these are actually good games for Lukaku. You can easily captain him. Having the likes of Ronaldo at that price point, at that 12 million or above price point, where you're not really captaining him, you're probably acting out because of FOMO, where you don't want to miss out on him scoring. That's a fair assessment, and that's your way of thinking or your way of playing, and it's absolutely fair, right? Because at the end of the day, there is absolutely no one way of playing FPL, right? Different managers have different appeal, different strategies, and you can very well make a case for both as well, considering that he's Ronaldo. But I still feel, and I think Satya has correctly mentioned, that fixtures do matter, right? Fixtures actually do matter. You can't just ignore the fixtures and say that he's Ronaldo and he's gonna score, and that's why I'm gonna have him. You have to understand, and you have to see what is that different approach, or what are the different players that you can have or you can get in that price which you're giving up for Ronaldo. Let's say if you're going for a Jimenez, for example, instead of Ronaldo, you're saving about 5 million, right? Now what are you going to do with that 5 million is that question. And I think if you can utilize that 5 million in a better way, where you get a Chelsea or a City at a defender, or maybe you can get a Rafinha, or you can make certain upgrades which makes your team a lot better, then I think letting go of Ronaldo is absolutely fine. Yes, I understand his FOMO, and I understand a lot of people won't do it because it's Ronaldo and he can score against any opposition, and that whole sort of a bias. Because FPL is not a game where you can have biases, right? You have to be very. I'm a United fan, and I still don't have a United player in my wildcard squad, which is absolutely fine, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm playing FPL. I'm not playing United versus or United in the fantasy Premier League. So it's absolutely fine not going with Ronaldo. I feel Lukaku is the better bet. If you are on a wild card, I think having Lukaku over Ronaldo definitely makes more sense. I still don't feel you should probably go with both, considering that you have a lot of value in other picks, and you can also go with great defenses, right? You can be a differential manager with a double up, or double up on the Man City or on the Chelsea defense, or even both, for example, right? So there's an alternate strategy right available for you, and I think that looks like the better play. Now, a lot of people are not using their wildcards, and I've got this question a lot where people are asking, should we take out Ronaldo for Lukaku for this particular week, right? Now, game week 7, that's why game week 7 wildcard is a bit tricky, because you have Ronaldo, who scored in the Champions League as well, who will score, right? There is no denying that he's not going to score, but he has a decent fixture against Everton. Everton have looked okay in defense. They've had good fixtures, and that's why the defensive numbers are okay, not that great, but because of the ease of fixture that they had, I think the defensive numbers are up there. I still feel they would concede against United, and I think they could concede a couple of goals as well. So if you are in that conundrum where you're thinking of whether to go for Lukaku or Ronaldo, if you're not in a wild card, I think having Ronaldo is absolutely fine in that particular case. Not in a wild card, but if you are not playing your wild card, right? If you're just making a regular transfer, if you're not using a wild card in game week 7 or even 8, I think having Ronaldo is absolutely fine for this particular week. You can also captain him, right? We'll talk about captaincy in just a bit, but you can also captain him. He's a decent captaincy option this week as well. I think he gets a goal this week, and it's fine if you don't make that move from Ronaldo to Lukaku this week. I think that particular move makes a lot of sense next week, where United have Leicester, then Liverpool, Tottenham. So that run starts, right, and then you would want to catch hold of Lukaku's great run of fixtures. And I think if there's no, again, it all comes down to what are your priorities and what is your team, right? If and I keep repeating myself, and I sound like a record, that if you don't have any priority transfers, if you really don't have anything to do, if you probably have a couple of transfers and you don't want to burn a transfer, you probably take that chance and you make that move. In case if you have other priorities to take a look after, and your midfield is probably not in a good shape right now, your defense is struggling right now with injuries, with flags, etc., you focus there and you keep Ronaldo for this week and you change him next week. I think that's an absolutely okay strategy to go for. So yeah, so I think Lukaku, of course, the better pick, but for this week, Ronaldo is absolutely fine. On a wild card, of course, I would want to have Lukaku. Apart from that, I still feel having Antonio makes a lot of sense. Yes, you could still make a case in terms of Antonio having tough fixtures, and that is why I mentioned that Benrahma won't be in my team, won't be on a wild card, but I would still want to have Antonio because I still feel, yes, with the Europa League coming in, and with Europe games coming in, I think there's a chance for injury, there's a chance for reduced minutes, but West Ham don't really have a lot of options up front, right? They don't really have a recognized striker as such, and I feel Antonio starts most games. He plays majority games. He doesn't really come off at 60, 70 minutes unless, of course, he's injured. So I think there is great merit in keeping him. He's been phenomenal so far, and I still feel he's an outside captaincy shout this week as well, right? If you want to go differential like last week, I think hats off and fair play to all of those who went with Antonio as captain last week because he was a good shout. And this week as well against a Brentford team who could be a little open, if it's like the Liverpool game, I think could be a good differential shout. I think most people won't go there, but I still feel there's merit in at least holding Antonio, if not a double up on Benrahma from the West Ham team. I think you don't really have you have options. Of course, you have options, but with Bamford injured, with the likes of DCL also out, I think in that category, Antonio is the standout pick in my opinion. In general, I think also Antonio has been the standout pick, and the people who've gone with him from the very beginning have benefited the most, right? So of course, you'll also have a lot of money invested in him as well. So till the time it's absolutely necessary, and if he gets an injury or something like that, I still feel it's worth having Antonio in your team. Now the third spot, I think that's a bit tricky and that's a bit more debatable because I've seen a lot of drafts. I've seen a lot of people have reached out to me with their teams on the wild card or in general as well, and a few of them have Tony, which is also, and Akshat just pointed out thoughts on Tony, and I think that is a lot of people were very impatient. In fact, a lot of people went with Tony in the beginning. I was not very bullish on Tony, considering it's a new team, considering it's Brentford, and you never know how they get accustomed to the Premier League and all of that stuff. But in general, whatever I've seen from Brentford, I think Tony is one kind of player who will do really well in football games, but has not translated those performances into FPL points, right? Because sometimes what players do on the field could be very good because he's been involved in Brentford in whatever Brentford has been creating, right? Whether it's creating chances, whether it's taking shots, whether it's trying to score a goal, you will have Tony at all ends, right? And I think he's getting into that 6 to 6.5 right now. I think he's 6.2 or 6.3, if I'm not wrong. Let me just check what's his price. I think he's 6.2 right now. 6.3. Yeah, he's 6.3. So in that 6.3 range, right, you have the likes of Armstrong, who looked promising, but now is kind of struggling, with Adams also struggling in the Southampton team. Of course, Southampton's also having a good run of fixtures, so he's also in contention. But if I really have to keep one player, and I really don't think Brentford has really tough fixtures. They have West Ham, which is okay. Like they can easily score against the West Ham defense, which has been a bit poor. Chelsea is a tricky one, but Leicester, Burnley, Norwich, Newcastle, I think those are all score. I won't even say winnable games, scoreable games. You can score in those matches, and if Brentford do well, or if Brentford attack or they score, even if they score a couple of goals, I think Tony's still going to be involved in an assist or a goal. And I think at that value, at 6.3 million, you don't expect him to score a brace every week, or get an assist every week, or get a 8 to 10 pointer every week. You don't expect that, right? You you want a player who consistently ticks along, who gives you decent points week on week, and you don't really have to worry about that third spot, right? So that's an absolutely viable strategy. I have not gone for Tony because I've found value in Buemo. If you look at both options, I think Tony would be the preferred option. He's also the more. I won't say Buemo is not nailed. I think both players are nailed, but I think Tony's more central, or Tony's more you know more important to Brentford and their attack as compared to Buemo. I personally, so now the reason I didn't go for Tony is that I really feel that Jimenez has has had decent fixtures. I think he's played okay. He's not played bad. Of course, he's missed a lot of chances. He's still missed. He's taken a lot of shots, and a lot of them have not been on target. He's been shooting from distance, shooting from inside the box. He's been trying to get that one goal, but I genuinely feel, right, because I saw that last Wolves game, and I genuinely feel that I could see the relief on Jimenez's face when he scored that goal. Right, it was an absolutely pure magical footballing moment where he gets that goal. There's a lot of there's a sense of relief that comes in, considering what has happened to him in the past, and considering how what kind of stuff has been bottling up inside him. I think that goal will release all that, and I think I've been me and I think a lot of content creators have been talking about this thing where you know we've said that it's just that one goal, right? Whenever he gets that one goal, that first goal, after that whole injury and after that entire longer period where he was out, I think he's gonna come good. I think there are signs that he's been doing well, and a great goal. We know that he's a great finisher. In general, he's been a great finisher, and I think there is merit in going for Jimenez, especially when I'm not really looking at Wolves attack per se. I'm not looking at Traore, I'm not looking at Trincao, not looking at Prudence. I don't see those players playing consistently and probably giving returns consistently. We've seen that whatever Wolves do, Jimenez is not somebody who's gonna get shared minutes, or who's probably gonna get benched, or who's not gonna play. If he's fit, which he's looking likely now, I think he's gonna play most weeks, and I think he's also gonna be on the end of goals for Wolves, right? So considering that, I think Jimenez looks like the the better pick in my opinion. But but if you go for Tony, and if you think of it as a long term move, and if you just want to have that one striker who just keeps ticking along, you don't really want to think about that particular spot. I think Tony is probably a set and forget option, and that also gives you flexibility if you have like five playing midfielders, or if you have a fifth or a fourth playing defender as well, right? You can change the structure of your team, you can change formation, and then you can probably bench Tony in the tougher game. So I think there's merit in both moves. It totally depends on how you look at things. I personally feel Jimenez could outscore Tony in the next few games with the fixtures that he has, and with how Wolves have generally played. Yes, they've lacked finishing, but I think they've created a lot of chances, and that is at least promising from their attacking point of view, right? So I think Jimenez, of course, is a decent option. Antonio we've already kind of covered. Apart from that, you can also go. I've seen a couple of drafts where people are going with someone like a Saint Max, right? Now, yes, Saint Max. If you look at that value, look at that price bracket, which is about 6 to 7 million. You have three. I think you have three standout options. You have Saint Max, then you have Tony, of course in no particular ranking or order, but and then you also have Armstrong, right? Now, Saint Max, I think, has kind of taken over the responsibility of what Wilson would have done when he would have been fit and would have played in the Newcastle setup. I think Saint Max is also a player who would take along very nicely. He Newcastle, I think, in terms of attack, have really surprised a lot of people this season. I think they're the ninth or the 10th best team in terms of their attacking underlying stats, right? And those are promising numbers from a Newcastle perspective. Yes, defensively they're very open. They still concede a lot of chances, a lot of goals, etc. But I still feel when you're looking at the attacking perspective, I think you're looking at games like Wolves, Tottenham, Crystal Palace, looking at Brighton, Brentford, Arsenal, Norwich, Burnley. So not the easiest run of fixtures, and then you have Chelsea and Arsenal as well in the middle. But I think if you look at the overall balance, I would probably if I have to rank, I would probably rank Tony ahead of Saint Max. I think Saint Max has gotten the easier games. I think West Ham, Villa, Leeds, Watford. I think these were good games for from an attacking perspective, especially when these teams are struggling in terms of their defense. But I think it's going to get a bit trickier, and I think with Wilson, let's say if Wilson comes back sooner, right? I think Saint Max probably might shift out, might play wide, might shift out wide, and his attacking threat won't get reduced, but his goal threat could get lesser, right? Could get reduced. He might be a more creative option than someone who has direct goal threat. So I think if you look at that perspective, I think I would probably not go with Saint Max. I would have Tony instead, and I will just play him most weeks, and in the tougher fixtures I can easily bench him. Otherwise, Jimenez is also a good option to go for. Um, I would not really go for someone like Ings or Watkins right now just yet. I know that the fixtures are getting a little easier probably. Tottenham, Wolves, Arsenal, West Ham, tough ones. Southampton, Brighton, Crystal Palace, okay fixtures, but then they also have Norwich, Burnley, which is a lot later. So probably a little later, probably around Christmas is when they could be an option. Probably Watkins, who might be a better option. But I think I think I would avoid any Villa attackers for now. Apart from that, some people have asked me about Jamie Vardy, and I think Vardy's a bit tricky because he's at that price point where he's not very straightforward, right? In terms of getting him in, it's a little awkward in terms of his pricing, like him and probably Aubameyang as well. 10.4 right now, who would you really let go, or who would you really you won't let go of Lukaku, you won't get let go of Ronaldo for Vardy. I think that's a huge risk. I think that's probably not the right move as well. If you go with, let's say, someone like a Lukaku or Ronaldo plus a Vardy, I think that's again like there's a lot of value invested in your attack. And I think Vardy is also, yes, he's getting goals, and he's Vardy's playing like Vardy now, but it's still tricky, right? Like Leicester has not been that great in attack. They've not really clicked so far. Iheanacho's not getting minutes, and I've been surprised by that. He's hardly gotten game time. Vardy will still score goals, but the fixtures are okay. But I still feel that's too much value for somebody like him because he might get rested in a few games. He might get injury as well, considering his age and all of that stuff. So I feel there are better options, and you have options like Antonio, you have options like Jimenez, you have probably options like Tony, who's a lot cheaper than Vardy, and they can cover off that Vardy threat, right? So I think if you're really going differential, probably Vardy is worth considering, but I personally won't go there. In terms of other players, I think so Timo Pukki again is was an option spoken about some time back, and when people were start in the beginning when they were making teams. But I just feel Norwich is a very weak outfit right now, and I really don't consider them from an attacking perspective or defense. Of course, let's forget the defense, but even from an attacking perspective, yes, they have a decent run coming up, but I still feel there are better options. Even at 6 million, I think I would, if I just have the exact money, I'll probably. I'm not sure how much is Armstrong, but I think yeah, Armstrong is 6 million. So if I have 5.96 million, I think I would go with Armstrong instead of Pookie. I won't go with Pookie. Of course, Kane, Neil Mope, these are not options. Firmino, these are not options that you would go for. One very interesting strategy, one very interesting point that I got into a conversation with a fellow friend, and so you actually, if you really want to target the Norwich defense, if you are looking at a 1 week punt, right? Burnley's playing Norwich, and that could be a great game to target because we've seen that Norwich defensively has really struggled, right? They're the teams to target. They're the team who's taking the most amount of battering right now. And I think if you consider the likes of Chris Wood, I know it's not an option long term or even for a couple of game weeks or a sustained period. But if you just want to have some fun, if you want to take a bit of a risk, and if you want to take a bit of chance, let's say if you have someone like a Bamford in your team, and Bamford is out slightly longer now, So you can go for someone like Chris Wood for 1 week, especially if you're wildcarding in game week 8. I think it could be a great punt. It could be a great 1 week punt, especially if you're looking for a 1 week punt, right? Like the way we spoke about Alonso. I think he could be a decent option for just 1 week. I think Norwich will still end up conceding a couple of goals, and I think there's a good chance that Chris Wood gets something from that game. So maybe he could be an option, right? Yeah, so I think these would be the picks to go for. I think if I really have to, again, so Mohan saying Emil Smith Rowe over Jimenez can swap Jimenez to Smith Rowe to, sorry, Smith Rowe to Tony, not Smith Rowe, sorry, Maximin, my bad. So Maximin over Jimenez can swap Maximin to Tony. So I think again, Jimenez has better fixtures. I can't really say that Saint Max is not the focal point of Newcastle right now, because I think whatever Newcastle's creating or scoring or attacking or whatever their attacking threat is right now, it's all through, majorly is coming through Saint Max, right? So I think could be an option, but I still feel Jimenez is a slightly long term pick. I think he's that focal point. He's that nailed starter. He's also not injury prone. Leave that injury that he had, but I think Saint Max is also a bit injury prone. He tends to get a lot of knocks, so that could be a transfer that you have to make later on. So I think stick with Jimenez. I think he looks like a better option. If you feel that he's not doing well, if you, let's say, if you keep him for a couple of weeks, he's not doing well, and if you feel that Tony could be a suitable replacement, then I think Jimenez to Tony could also be a move to make. And I think that is where you can also look at. But I think I personally prefer Jimenez. Any other forwards that you guys can think of, or I've not covered, please let me know. But in general, I think I'll probably want to go ahead with a three up top, because I think last season as well, I think this strategy really worked well, where played with three. I played a 3-4-3 in most games, and I think it did really well. You have decent options to go for. You have the likes of Lukaku, who's of course a premium. You have Antonio Jimenez. There are options, right? There are options that you can go for, and I don't really see playing a 3-5-2, considering that you have so much uncertainty in terms of the midfield picks. I think you can easily make a case for a 4-3-3 as well, where you go slightly heavy in terms of your defense with the likes of Chelsea and Man City defenders in, and you play with three midfielders, including a Salah, and then three attackers. I think that's also a very viable strategy to go for. So yeah, so these are decent options to go for. I think in terms of captaincy as well, I think we'll touch upon captaincy now, and if you have any more questions, we'll kind of take that as well. In terms of captaincy, I think it's a little close in terms of this week. I think a lot of people are clearly citing Lukaku as the favorite, and there's a high chance that he could be a favorite option this week, the most popular option this week. I think majority of the people who don't have Lukaku are getting him in this week, whether it's with Ronaldo in place of Ronaldo or on a wild card where they swap Ronaldo, for example. So Lukaku will be heavily captained, will be heavily owned as well. I think his current ownership is probably around 40%, if not more. So I think he's definitely the most favorite option. He's playing a Southampton team who is who's gonna concede chances. Whether Chelsea could take advantage, having played a tough game against Juventus, having lost against City as well. I think that's also a counter argument to make. But I still feel, having said all of that, I still feel Lukaku against, specifically against those slightly weaker teams, has been doing well, will do well, and I think there's a good chance that he can get a huge haul this week. So I think if you have Lukaku, if you're okay playing, it's not even playing safe, right? I think it's kind of playing safe because he's still the most nailed, or the most popular option this week. But I think Lukaku has to be number one. In case if you don't have Lukaku, and if you cannot get Lukaku by any chance, and if you have Ronaldo, I think Ronaldo against the Everton team, I think it's a decent option to go for. I think Everton will concede chances. There's a good chance that Benitez could shut shop and could play defensive, but I still feel Ronaldo has that we know Ronaldo has the capability to score, right? He did that in the Champions League game midweek as well. So I think there's a good chance that Ronaldo can score at least a goal. And for this week, I think if you don't have Lukaku, Ronaldo would be the second best option. If you want to go a bit differential, I think that is where a couple of options open up. And if you have, I think if you have Jimenez, if you have Antonio, I would probably prefer someone like an Antonio against Brentford. I think I know you might argue, you might counter that Brentford is a team which generally keeps tight at the back, but I think the kind of defense, the kind of attack that Brentford faced so far were a lot different from what they will be facing now, right? Liverpool was a completely different game because they hadn't faced anything like Liverpool before in the Premier League this season. So that was a completely different game, and we saw what happened in that game. We saw that Brentford wasn't the team which was just sitting back, sitting deep, trying to defend. They were taking the game by the skin. They were attacking, and they took Liverpool. I think they took Liverpool by surprise, and I think in the last 10-15 minutes they could have even won the game and even could score more goals, right? So West Ham is I can't compare West Ham attack to the Liverpool attack, but West Ham is also a team which likes to attack, with the likes of Antonio, with the likes of Benrahma in the team. I think they will play a lot more further forward, and I think that will also give Brentford a chance to play their own game and not really defend. Considering that West Ham has had a weak defense so far, so I think if you really want to take a chance and take a differential punt, I think Antonio is right up there. uh, he probably would be a slightly better bet than Jimenez, considering that there's a slight uncertainty in terms of Jimenez, his attacking potential, his finishing ability, and how the whole Wolves team kind of plays around him. But I personally feel Jimenez is a great option. But if you want to go for a differential, I think Antonio is also a good one. But I think this week is probably not a week for a differential captain. I think Lukaku against Southampton looks straightforward. If you don't have Lukaku, then Ronaldo against Everton is also a great option. So I think these two would be the highest scoring picks this week. But yeah, if you really want to take a chance, go differential, take a punt, I think Antonio, Jimenez both are great options. We'll take up some questions. Soham, you're saying you got Saint Max, Ronaldo, Vardy in front. See, I think it's a decent front three, to be honest. You going a bit differential again with Vardy and Saint Max. So I think I pretty much like it. Ronaldo is okay this week, but yeah, for the tougher fixtures, you might want to change him to a Lukaku maybe. Again, depends on how you look at Ronaldo and how you look at the fixtures that he has. Grealish thoughts, James. I think I've kind of mentioned that. Risky pick would has been ticking along okay. Underlying stats have been average, haven't been that great. A lot of people believe that he's nailed. I still am not sure on that because I've taken the heat with Torres and even Mahrez last season. So I, I would get him again. My priority would be the likes of Rafinha before. If you already have him and if you're looking at other picks, I think it's a risk. It's a definite risk, and if you're okay taking that risk, if you are okay with an odd benching here and there, maybe him not playing a couple of weeks as well, I think could be okay. Could be okay. Grealish could be okay. Um, have Sar, Benrahma, Gray, Salah, and Rafinha. Decent mid. Yeah, absolutely. Sar, Benrahma, Gray, Salah, Rafinha, all good players this week. I think Gray could find it difficult against Man United, but if Shaw and Maguire are missing, I think could be something in for Everton as well. Could be a goal in there for Everton as well. And Gray, you would expect Gray to be involved in most of the attacking output that Everton would be creating or would be having in that game. So yeah, could be an option. But yeah, overall decent. I think Sar this week is a great option against Leeds. I think Leeds is a struggling defense, and I think you would want to have Sar at least for this game, if not more. Antonio Essential, yeah, looks like that for now at least. Could change in after a couple of games when the fixtures get a little trickier. Will Ole get sacked before Christmas? I don't know, man. I really don't know. It's that one transfer, or is that one that window where we could have signed a CDM. I think that is where it's all gone wrong. Uh, with Ronaldo, I think the hype was huge in terms of what he's gonna get to the table or how he's gonna improve the other players around him. I think it's right now probably it's not really happening. To be very honest, if you've looked at United's games, I think yes, you are still we are still close to winning games, or we are still winning games somehow because of Ronaldo and because of the finishing, or because of last minute goals, etc. Right? Because but those can't really happen week on week, right? So yeah, but before Christmas again, if we really go downhill, and if if results start going really badly, and if we are probably seventh, eighth, or even it's difficult considering the quality that we have, right? But yeah, if we go out of the Champions League, or if we're playing bad, if we go out of the cup games, etc., if league is also, if in the league also we're struggling, it's difficult. I really don't feel that he's gonna get sacked before Christmas. Yes, if we don't win a trophy this season, maybe don't know, but could be a possibility. Brian, you're saying you have no idea whether I will wildcard this week, but the plan is to hold much longer, not looking longer is good anyway. What are your thoughts on Tony for a wild card with Antonio and Lukaku? I think it's as I already mentioned, Tony, Antonio, Lukaku is absolutely fine. I have not gone with Tony. I've gone with Buemo instead. I've put my faith in Jimenez, and I really feel that he will come good. So I think, but yeah, it's an absolutely fair move, and you can also get a decent midfield. Totally depends on what players you have, right? So if you don't have a City defender, if you don't have a Chelsea defender, if you don't have any Chelsea players, if you have the likes of Trent, if you have the likes of Shaw, if you have, uh, you know, uh, if you have Rhys James by any chance, for example, or if you have other players that, if you have the likes of Jota, Greenwood, and all of this combined, right? I think it's absolutely fair to play the wild card this week. It's very team dependent. I think if you can set up 9 to 10 players, and if you can make a couple of transfers, and if you're not planning to play the wild card even in game week 8, then even a hit is fine this week. But in general, if you are planning to wild card next week, taking hits for players that you might not have long term, or you might have on a wild card, doesn't make any sense. I think might as well just use the wild card. I know it's a tricky situation because you can't really get a lot of City players for this particular week, because the fixture swing is that way, where they have Liverpool, which is the toughest game probably of the season for them. So yeah, and plus you have Ronaldo, you have Sar, who have decent fixtures. Sar is Leeds. Next week you might not. Next game week you might not want Sar, right? So I think if you have all of these conundrums, I think it's okay to roll it and probably play it in 8, or probably play it in later, like later, probably game week 13 or 15, which are potential options. But I think it's okay. It's okay. Totally depends on your team, and then what situation you're in. I personally felt that uh, I had a lot of players who were doubtful, who had injury concerns, and I generally wasn't really happy with the squad over the last week as well. I expected the last week to go a bit slow, and it went pretty average, and we got a red arrow as well. So I think I had pretty much set my mind in terms of the wildcard, and that's why I had played it early as well. There are a couple of picks which are not confirmed, as I mentioned here, but I think pretty much set in terms of my team on the wild card. Again, there are a couple of differentials here. Uh, it's a risky one, considering that there could be some losses as well. Considering the names I've mentioned and the players that I've mentioned who also have decent fixtures. But I think on the balance, I'm pretty happy with what I have right now, and what I had earlier. And I think this team is quite different from what I had in last week, right? So I think that's absolutely fine. Cool. Yeah, so we'll open up for any more questions, and if you guys have any questions. In terms of captaincy, who should you captain between Salah and Sar, or Alonso as a differential? I think if I really have to go for somebody, I would go for Sar as a differential, Nigel. I think against Leeds, which is a very weak attack, weak defense, sorry. Sar could be a great option to go for. I think as a differential, I think Alonso might get benched, and plus a defender, it's a bit risky. You won't have a Cancelo or a Stones all the time, right? Like last season. So I think going with Sar could be a great option. I think if you're looking for a differential. No Trent, Shashwat, I've already kind of covered. So I have a plan to get back Trent. I have 2 million in the bank as well. Depending on when he's back, if he's back next week, I think Aspilicueta to probably Trent would be the option to go for. You can also go without Trent, but I think it's a bit risky considering how he's played and how he's been so far. I think you keep Trent if you can, On a wild card, probably for a week you can avoid him, considering he's already, he might not play, or even if he plays, he's playing City, right? Not the easiest fixture. So that, considering all of that, I think no trend for a week is fine. But yeah, definitely have a plan to get him back. Also, Alonso plan to get rid next week for Rudiger, Aspilicueta. I think Alonso I've already kind of covered, but yeah, I won't get rid of Alonso for a Chelsea defender. Very honestly, if I have him, I'll take the chance. I'll take the risk. But yeah, definitely have a bench ready. Have at least one defender ready if he doesn't start, because I don't think so. He's a player who will come off the bench and play the last 15-20 minutes. I don't see him as that sort of a player. So I think if he plays the major chunk of the game. Otherwise, he doesn't start, or if he doesn't feature at all, right? So that should be okay. Animesh, you think thoughts on the team of Sanchez, Cancelo, Rudiger, Tierney, Salah, Jota, Rafinha, Saka, Odegaard, Ronaldo, and Tony? I think it's a decent team. You're playing with two up front. I don't know who is your third attacker or third forward. Uh, I'm assuming there's not a wildcard team, because there are certain picks that I would not have on a wildcard. But in general, I think Cancelo, Rudiger, Tierney is okay. Sanchez also okay this week. Um, Salah, Jota, both against Man City, not ideal, but you could replace Jota for somebody else. You already have Rafinha, you already have Saka. I think I would probably have one of Saka or Odegaard, or play one of Saka or Odegaard. I would not play both. Uh, Seems like overkill of the of the Arsenal attack. I think I would probably play Saka instead of Odegaard. In terms of transfer, I think probably would be the one to kind of make way. If you've not made any transfers yet, if you have, it's fine. You can keep him for this week. Mohan, you saying would it be better to get Tony after a bye? Yeah, I think if I don't have Buemo, then Tony is an option. If I have Buemo already, then I won't really do a double up right away. I think you could see how Brentford play for the next few weeks, and then get in Tony if I don't have Tony for my own team. In case if you want to go ahead with Tony, you can do the other way. You can get in Buemo if he's combining well, if he's playing well, if he's also getting a few returns. I think his price point is such that if he starts getting those returns, I think he's going to be a great bargain. So I think yeah, that could be the play. Diaz versus Cancelo, James. I think fixture proof. I would say Diaz is definitely fixture proof. I think if you want to target the most nailed defender in the Man City lineup, I think it has to be Diaz. Uh, with him, the upside is a lot lesser than what you would get with Cancelo. I think Cancelo gives you that huge attacking upside where he could give you a huge 10, 12, 15 pointer haul, which you might not get with Diaz. Diaz has been okay. He's been slightly better in terms of his attacking output, but I think if you want to go safe, absolutely safe, then Diaz. Otherwise, go Cancelo. But again, with Cancelo, there's a chance that he could get benched for a game or two. Right now, doesn't look like the case, but you never know with Pep, right? Still doesn't look like that. But in case if that happens, with Cancelo, I think we should have somebody on the bench ready, even if it's a Livramento or a Duffy, or or even a Wolves defender, for example. I think. I think having Cancelo is fair play. I think you're going for the more attacking upside, and of course you are aware of the risk, and uh, of the potential loss of points. For example, let's say if he doesn't start and Diaz starts and he gets a clean sheet, you lose out on points and lose out on ranks. That could also happen. But I really feel that Cancelo is nailed in that Man City defense for now, and I think there's a good chance that you can get good returns from him. Great. We'll take up a couple of more questions in case you guys have any. We've had a couple of hours, in fact. I think we started around 9. It's been a couple of hours since we've streamed. Uh, I hope I was able to get my thoughts in, make you understand why I've made the wildcard, or why I've gone for the wildcard. I think for me it was the right move. For me it was the right time. I think a lot of people can also wait for next week, in case if if there's not much, or not a lot to kind of change and really tinker about. But I think I was pretty comfortable making that switch. Of course, there are a couple of changes, or there are a couple of players in mind which might come into the team, which are not there right now. But I think pretty much set in terms of having an Arsenal attacker, maybe even Rafinha, Salah, Lukaku, Jimenez, Antonio. I think these are pretty much nailed options. Even Rudiger, Semedo, Ramsdale. I think these are pretty much nailed options. I think the ones that could probably chop and change could be Buemo, Gallagher, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I think still a day to go, and as and when we get more information after the press conferences, if we have any more players who probably have probably might not feature, might get injured, or anything can happen, right? So we'll look into that and we'll make those changes. But I think pretty much set in terms of the wild card. Thank you so much. I think we'll wrap it up here. So thank you so much for staying for all this while, and whosoever has been there from the very beginning. I think thank you so much for your support, and hopefully I was able to make things a little clearer for you. We'll in terms of content, I think we'll be posting our teams like the regular way on Instagram, and we'll also let's see if I can do a video on team selection. Might not be a video. We might just release the team on Instagram. We'll definitely do a deadline stream in case you guys have any final questions or any new information that we can get and we can share just before the deadline. So we'll definitely be doing that. So make sure that you join us for that as well, guys. Thank you so much again. Hit the like button if you've not. You subscribe to the channel as well, and it was great, lovely talking to all of you. Great to be back in the FPL scene again. I think I missed FPL and football over the past few weeks, but all is good and I'm back. So yeah, I'll see you soon, and we'll definitely get into deeper discussions during the deadline stream, right? Great. That'll be all from my side, and thank you for joining, and I'll see you in Saners next time.